earlier meeting. Okay, staff, are we ready to begin?
Yes, Mayor, we are ready.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the San Bruno City Council special meeting of August the 3rd, 2022. May I please have roll call?
Councilmember Hamilton,
Here.
Councilmember Marty Medina,
Here.
Councilmember Salazar,
Here.
Vice Mayor Mason, here, Mayor Rico Medina.
Here. Thank you very much. Now we'll move on to item 3, public comments for items not on the agenda. Individuals will have up to 3 minutes to speak on matters that are not on tonight's agenda. It is council policy to refer matters raised in this forum to staff for investigation and or action where appropriate. The Brown Act prohibits the council from discussing and or acting upon any item not agendized pursuant to state law. And at this time, if there's any members of the public for items not on the agenda, you could raise your hand and you'll be brought in.
I will be bringing in Sandra Perez Vargas. Sandra, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, whenever you're ready.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I took a drive down Huntington, going south of Huntington on San Antonio yesterday. I hadn't been in that area in a while. And I noticed that once again along the railroad tracks, that dumping is pretty out of control. There are a lot of mattresses and furniture and just overall junk. And I just really can't imagine how neighbors that live across from it are dealing with their neighborhood treating like a dumping ground. I'm not really sure how that's being addressed, but I think it should be taken pretty seriously. And I also am calling to inquire, and I would like feedback on this from someone on staff. I've asked quite a few times about the tree in Florida Park, the heritage tree that was cut down a couple years back, and the agreement was that that would be removed, the heritage tree would be removed, but only under the condition that it would be replaced with a mature tree that is native. And I have not heard back from any office in the city. I think it's really important that we get that tree there. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker we'll be bringing in is Joel Toscano. Joel, whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Hi, thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Joel Toscano. I'm a union representative at the Carpenters Local 217 in San Mateo County. I represent over 1,200 members in San Mateo County. Today I'm speaking on behalf of my brothers and sisters in this county, and I would like to touch upon the importance of the labor standards language in jobs that are coming down the pipeline in the future. Labor standards such as apprenticeship, healthcare, as well as local hire. I mean, I think that apprenticeship programs are proven escalators to the middle class training in California residents every year at no cost of taxpayers' money. Also, the lack of stable healthcare is one of the main factors that keeps workers away from the industry, leading to labor shortages in our community. Last but not least, local hire. With local hire policies, would only help ensure that new developers in the future will benefit members of this community by reinvesting the local money back in our city, and will create a work and life balance. Implementing language like this in housing developments will only elevate the living standards of our citizens and give the working men and women the opportunity to be successful in the community they live in. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker. Oh, there are no more hands raised. Mayor Medina, you're on mute.
Sorry, thank you. Next, we'll move on to consent calendar. We have 3 items. All actions on the consent have been taken prior or can be done in one action unless someone from council wishes to pull an item. Are there any items that wish to be pulled for a separate vote? Any item, I think item B for Councilmember Medina, Is there any item other than that you have a comment or question on? With not seeing any, then we will move to item B, adopt resolution approving agreement between the City of San Bruno and the Mid-Management Bargaining Unit and authorizing execution by the City Manager. Councilor Medina.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Medina. I just wanted to acknowledge all the work to all that were involved in coming to this agreement. It's not easy, and I just wanted to make sure everyone was aware that we were appreciative of all the work. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from council? Is there any members of the public that wish to speak on any of the three consent items before council takes action?
No hands are raised.
Thank you very much. Bring it back to council for action, please.
Through the mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve the items on consent. I'll second.
Motion Hamilton, seconded Salazar. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Hamilton,
Aye.
Councilmember Marty Medina,
Aye.
Councilmember Salazar,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Mason,
Aye.
Mayor, Mayor Rico Medina.
Aye, yes. Passes 5-0. Thank you very much. Now we'll move on to item 5, conduct of business. First item is item A.
Item 5A, adopt resolution authorizes the city manager to amend the fiscal year 2022 to 23 stormwater operating contractual services budget for stormwater system spot repair services with C2R Engineering in the amount of $110,000 to complete storm drain and sinkhole repairs at 2850 Sneath Lane, appropriating $110,000 from the General Fund, Capital Reserve Fund, accepting the storm drain easement deed from the property owner and directing the execution and filing of a certification of acceptance.
Thank you very much. And now we will turn it over to the city manager, please.
Thank you, Mayor Medina. To the mayor, members of the city council, members of the public, Javon Grogan, city manager. I'll just do a quick introduction of 5A, and then I will turn it over to Deputy Director of the Public Works Department, Dennis Bosch. The city council will remember that I sent you an email on May 2nd with regard to a sinkhole that was developing at a apartment complex located at 2850 Sneath Lane. That sinkhole was developing right under a city storm drain. City staff was alerted to the sinkhole and took immediate measures to stabilize the area so that we would not have a vehicle or other incident that would enlarge the sinkhole. And staff then undertook a number of investigations, and we are before you tonight because the preliminary work has been done. We know the estimated cost to effectuate the repair, as well as there's an agreement needed to enter into an easement agreement. And so I'll turn it over to Deputy Director Bosch to give the presentation, after which we are certainly here for any questions that the City Council may have. Thank you.
Mr. Bosch.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm Dennis Bosch, your Deputy Director of Public Works. And as Javon has stated tonight, I'm presenting a request for funding of a needed storm drain mainline repair at 2850 Sneath Lane that our department was made aware of on April 27th of this year. City staff responded at that time and located an open sinkhole on the property directly over a storm drain mainline. A pipe inspection of the mainline found it to be failing at multiple locations and needing repair. And as I pull up the slide, share my screen. Okay. Hopefully you can see that. So the objective, due to the need to repair the mainline and sinkhole, the department's objective and request is to ask council to adopt a resolution and necessary actions related to the storm drain repair at 2850 Sneath Lane, including authorize the city manager to amend the 22-23 stormwater operating contractual services budget for stormwater system spot repair services with C2R Engineering in the amount of $110,000. Also to appropriate $110,000 from the General Fund, Capital Reserve Fund, and accept a storm drain easement deed from the property owner and directing an execution and filing of a certification of acceptance. So just quick agenda, background, location, photos, the City Council's action, and then questions. So 2850 Sneath Lane. Property contains a storm drain main that has produced a sinkhole due to the deteriorated pipe. The main delivers surface water from Fleetwood Drive. The stormwater from Fleetwood Drive travels through the property and out to Sneath Lane. An easement search found that there were city easements for the storm drain main on both sides of the property. However, there is no city easement for the portion of the main on the property. The next slide shows the location, placement of storm drain main, and deteriorated pipe locations found after investigation. If you look at the top of the page, if you can just see the houses in gray with some addresses, that's a turn on Fleetwood Drive. The red dotted line represents the line of travel for the storm drain line. So it comes from Fleetwood down between two properties and then comes into the property at 2850 Sneath Lane. And then we've made different notations here. Damaged areas holes with roots on the 24-inch corrugated metal pipe. So here we have a picture. It's about the diameter of a large truck tire, and directly underneath that is the storm drain main line that's on the property. Now, if I can talk, this is inside of the pipe, and if I can call your attention, I don't know if you see my cursor, but if you look to the top, which is almost the below right-hand section of the pipe, you see a jagged edge. That's where metal has basically eroded away, and there's no metal left on the bottom of the pipe. And so what happens is, as water comes down during storms, it then takes dirt away, and as it takes that dirt away, then a sinkhole forms above the pipe, and then creating a sinkhole. So, for City Council action, adopt a resolution related to the emergency repair at 2850 Sneath Lane. Again, to authorize the city manager to amend the operating contractual services budget for C2R engineering in the amount of $110,000, appropriate $110,000 from the general fund capital reserve, and accept a storm drain easement deed from the property owner and directing the execution and filing of a certification of compliance. With that, I'll take any questions, and I do have Services Manager Ted Chapman from the Streets and Storm Division in the waiting room to also answer questions if needed.
Thank you, Mr. Bosch, for the report. Appreciate it. And at this time, there we go, we're all back. Council questions? Councilmember Medina.
Yes, thank you for the report. And my main question is regarding the amount of video that we have taken proactively of our system so that we can have a better gauge of where we are. Because this clearly isn't going to be the only spot, right? If we're not actively collecting video, then we will be responding to failures. And so just wanted to hear, what are we doing about it? What have we done? What we're planning to do, especially in that area. It's kind of vintage of the years it was installed. And I think up in that area, it's probably a little hotter soil that's a little more corrosive. I think we had some water issues up in that area as well. So just wondered if we can get a little bit more information on that. Thank you.
So it's yes, much like the Crestmore Canyon incident that happened a couple of years ago. It was from a deteriorated pipe. Not just in this neighborhood, we have deteriorated pipes all over. The video or the inside screenshot that you've seen of the deteriorated pipe, that was from our sewer crew. And so we have that capability now since we got that truck years ago. And we have a systematic and programmatic video timing system of when we do the whole sewer system. As of right now, if we have the ability to, we respond to incidents where something has been highlighted or brought to our attention, much like in this case. At this time, we haven't had the resources to either delineate a second CCTV truck, which we don't have, to just video storm drain lines. You asked how much have we done to this point. I could refer that to Services Manager Chapman if he's on. He might have a better idea of give you maybe possibly a rough estimate on total feet.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council members. Ted Chapman, Services Manager for Street and Storm Division. In regards to the amount of storm drains that's been videoed over the last 3 to 4 years, it would probably be in the neighborhood of maybe 10 to 15%. When we do have the ability to utilize the wastewater video crew, they have been starting videoing the entire system up top in the spyglass area and working their way down. One of our issues is every time they're videoing, we find problems. And due to limited funding, we're noting it, we're keeping track of it, but what we're seeing is almost all of the corrugated metal pipes have signs of corrosion, and what we've seen in the last 2 to 3 years, that we're going to have serious problems moving down the road in regards to the corrugated. All of our concrete pipes are holding up fairly well, and on the drawing that Dennis showed you, from Fleetwood to the manhole in the backyard, that's consistent with the entire neighborhoods. It's all concrete pipe, but once it leaves the properties where we're running into the corrugated. If that answers your question.
No, that absolutely did. Thank you.
Through the mayor, can I just...
Yes, please.
I just want to expound just a little bit upon responses, because it's important to note that the city conducted a stormwater master plan in 2014. And at that time, there were $30 million worth improvements that were needed, capacity improvements, and another $23 million worth of condition improvements that were estimated. It's important to note that of that nearly $50 million, the city has been able to do absolutely zero due to the funding. Our stormwater fees have not been increased since 1994. And the public, and I know the council will remember that the city undertook an effort that ultimately was unsuccessful last year to increase stormwater fees. And so it is absolutely true that we have corroded pipe and we are responding to critical issues. It is absolutely a result of the lack of capital funding that is available to the city. And I know the council knows as well that your stormwater fund is projected to be under budget by more than $1 million at the end of this fiscal year. And we will talk a little bit more about that as we talk about other items tonight. But I just want to highlight that in connection with this, because that is the true reason why those capital projects have not been done.
Any other questions from colleagues at this time? Come on, we'll see if there's any members of the public that wish to speak on this item, please.
There are currently no hands raised.
Thank you very much.
I apologize. One hand just went up. I will be bringing in Jeremy. Jeremy, can you hear us?
Hello, Council.
Whenever you're ready.
Okay. Well, it's a pleasure to speak in front of all of you today. I am in the process of getting my nomination paperwork, so thank you if you are asking me about that. This is probably the most serious issue facing the city, and you know, I'm really running on a campaign where I see pretty big picture crises facing the American people, the planet at large. And
excuse me. I very much apologize, and we'll stop the clock. But this is in regards to the specific topic of the resolution.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I'll keep tight then.
No worries.
My specific question is to the Deputy Director. How much of this corrosion would have been prevented if stormwater fees were raised perhaps in the last 15 years? Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
No other hands are raised.
Thank you. Let's bring it back to council and see if there's follow-up from colleagues to anything else that's been said or asked. If not, this is a action item.
Through the mayor.
Please, Councilmember Hamilton.
Is it possible to address the question that was raised during public comment?
That's why I was asking if any colleagues want to ask that or rephrase it. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So I believe, and I believe the question was, would this have been prevented had we been keeping pace with stormwater fees over the past? I believe the questioner asked said 15 years.
Thank you, Councilmember. City Manager.
Sure. That's a detailed question that I'll toss it to the Deputy Director to see if there's a more nuanced response. At a high level, I think the best response that I could give is certainly additional funds for capital improvement projects, especially known capital improvement projects that we know we have to undertake would prevent failures. Whether this particular line would have been in cycle, I cannot answer that question. But I'll tell you, without having the funds, we don't do the projects, and without doing the projects, they only get more expensive, and we're responding to failures. But Deputy Director Bosch, is there anything that you can add?
I was just going to say, and it backs up what you said. Basically, I mean, it's tough to tell whether that pipe specifically would have been repaired. I mean, materials have a lifespan. In this case, the metal pipe has gone past its lifespan. It was put in years ago. Metal pipes aren't usually put in for stormwater anymore, so that's another thing. But as to say whether it would have been specifically done, in the triage of one location versus another, it's tough to say if it would have been handled in 15 years or not. But again, like John said, if money had been spent or if money's put in the checkbook to pay for things, obviously things then get taken care of. That's all.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Colleagues, any action from council?
Through the mayor, I will make a motion that we adopt the resolution.
I'll second it.
Motion Hampton, seconded Marty Medina. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Aye.
Councilmember Marty Medina?
Aye.
Councilmember Salazar?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Mason? Aye. Mayor Rico Medina?
Aye. Resolution passes 5-0. Now we'll move on to next item, item B.
Item 5B, consideration of resolution of the City Council of the City of San Bruno submitting to the voters at the November 8, 2022 general municipal election a measure that proposes a city charter be adopted to change the City of San Bruno from a general law city to a charter city, and to authorize a real property transfer tax, and that proposes adoption of an ordinance authorizing a commercial real property transfer tax, requesting that such election be consolidated with the statewide general election held on that date, making a determination of exemption under CEQA, and taking certain other actions.
Thank you very much. And we'll move it to this item to our city attorney.
Mr. Mayor, Javon Grogan.
Oh, I apologize, and I didn't see you on the screen. I just clicked on that screen. I apologize very much. City Manager.
No worries.
Our City Attorney. Thank you.
Absolutely. Again, to the Mayor, the City Council, members of the public at home, Javon Grogan, City Manager. I will give tonight's presentation on 5B with my colleague, our interim City Clerk, Tricia Ortiz, and we will tag team this presentation. We had the long reading of this item, so I will not repeat that, but the question that is before the City Council in this item is whether to put a measure before voters for voters to consider adopting a city charter and imposing a 1% transfer tax on the sale of commercial property. So we have a presentation and discussion prepared for the City Council, and we'll right now go through the outline of that. We'll first begin with going through public meetings and the public engagement that we've had to date on this item. We will provide a little background. And so the background will discuss the city's fiscal condition and some of the prior efforts that the City Council have directed to address the city's fiscal condition. And for the City Council and some members of the public that have followed these conversations and discussions we've had, some of these slides will look new. And others will not look new. And those that are not new, it's because they were not created for this presentation. They are in fact slides from conversations that we have been having with the community over several years to address the city's fiscal condition. We will then provide an overview of the draft city charter and the commercial property transfer tax ordinance. We will then discuss the timeline, have a period for council questions on the staff report in the presentation. Item 6 will be public comment. And then 7 will be followed by City Council deliberation. And again, finally, action on whether the City Council desires to put the question before voters. And so first we'll do a quick note on public engagement. And so in our conversation with regard to the potential city charter and commercial property transfer tax, it's important to note that this meeting will be 6 public meetings that the City Council has held on the topics that really begun in October of 21 through today, August 3rd. The city issued a citywide mailer in June, and that was in response to the City Council's request to have more public engagement and really do a detailed education of the community. And you have the front page of that mailer in the top right-hand corner. In addition, the city created a dedicated webpage to convey information about the proposed charter and the transfer tax. That website is still up to date. You see the address there. It's our normal web address, sanbruno.ca.gov/citycharter. And that website includes all prior staff reports, presentations, and even had the Zoom links for all of the meetings. We created those early and wanted to make sure that those were up there. And in addition, the city implemented a number of social media posts, and there was a June article in the city manager's e-newsletter that went into detail about the topic. Again, responding directly to the City Council after your first public hearing, you wanted to make it very clear that we have additional engagement, and we added an additional public meeting as well, that you know. Very briefly, let's go through a few of those meetings. It's important to note that on October 26th of 21, the City Council discussed several potential ballot items for the November 22 election, and that's the upcoming election on November 8th. And you directed staff to research and provide you with options for a city charter and a commercial property transfer tax. And commercial is underlined there purposely, and it's really underlined to make it clear that from the very outset, the City Council was emphatic that a property transfer tax be structured so that it would not be charged on single-family homes or condominiums. And it's also important to note that because it is a tax on property owners at the time of sale, the tax would not be paid by renters. On March 29th of this year, the City Council met, and we had a special meeting where the City Council discussed the topic further. And the important note is you directed the city staff at that time to conduct a poll of likely voters, further narrowing down the potential ballot items that you would consider for the November ballot. You then had your first public hearing, as required by state law. Anytime a city is considering a charter, public hearings on the contents of that charter are required, and so you had that meeting on June 7th. Additionally, we held a City Council study session on June 28th, where you discussed the matter further, provided additional direction to staff, and we will go through a little bit of that because the City Council was very clear that you would like a charter that limits the City Council's power, and our city attorney will talk about that. Your last meeting on this topic was held on July 12th, and that was the second public hearing on the contents of the charter. And again, that charter includes an integral 1% commercial property sales tax. Next, we want to provide a little background. And in this section, we will talk about San Bruno's fiscal sustainability project. We will highlight some of the city's fiscal challenges, plural, and discuss prior strategies. Important to note, we're talking at a high level. We're on the balcony in maybe 10,000 feet. Certainly there are a number of strategies and fiscal challenges, but we will not get into them all tonight. We will recap the process that you undertook to evaluate potential measures for the November 22 ballot. We will, in particular, pause on the potential capital bond that the City Council investigated that was included in the likely voter poll, as well as the commercial property transfer tax, and we will, at a high level, discuss the results of that poll. As we begin to talk about the city's fiscal condition, it is important to know, and I know that this chart is very familiar to the City Council, but for those residents that may be joining the process for the first time, it is important to know that the city does not have a revenue problem. San Bruno has an expenditure problem. The chart before you shows our per capita, so per individual resident of San Bruno, the revenue that goes to the city's general fund, our general checkbook, compared to a number of other cities. I believe there is 6 comparison cities up there. And San Bruno's per capita general fund revenue is just under $1,200. And the second lowest in this comparison, second only to Daly City. Important to note, Daly City has more than double our population. And so we've talked about this chart before. We've talked about how it compares to San Bruno and frankly, how it impacts our ability to fund the ongoing operations and capital maintenance needs of the city. A little bit more about our fiscal sustainability. Important to note that in 2019, the city launched a comprehensive fiscal sustainability project. That title is purposeful because while the city's budget has been stable, it has not been sustainable. And it has not been sustainable because we know that we have known operational and infrastructure capital building needs that we have not been able to fund for several years. Through this project, the city seeks to improve its fiscal condition so that there are sufficient annual and long-term funds to provide the high-quality services and maintenance of our infrastructure that we know residents expect and deserve. It's important to note that the project remains active. It's also important to note that the city has implemented numerous expenditure controls, revenue enhancements, cost shifts, meaning moving money that was funded by the general fund to another funding source. And on page 2 of 7 of the staff report, there lists a number of strategies that have been successfully conducted. And so some of those are, the city, as we know, implemented and put the question of a Measure G sales tax before voters. That is bringing in $4 million a year. The city increased the hotel room tax by 2%. During COVID-19, the city reduced its budget by $8.2 million. And many of those positions that were frozen and cut have not come back. We recently had discussions about a dispatcher position that has not yet been restored. The city has also undertaken a number of economic development opportunities. We see that in the Bay Hill Specific Plan. Also various grants. The city has received millions of dollars in a grant for a regional stormwater capture project at I-280. The city, through the city council's efforts, the city recently received a grant from the county for Measure A for improvements to Posey Park. In addition, we were able to leverage funds from PG&E to support wildfire mitigation. But what is true is that despite all of these successful efforts, there remains a significant financial challenge. And this is true with respect to both the annual ongoing need for programs and services, as well as the need to maintain infrastructure. And just as a high level, I want to touch on a few aspects of that. This slide will be very familiar to the City Council because it was recently presented by our Chief of Police. And it's a presentation that notes that since 1975, the city actually has fewer police officers than it had in 1975. In 1975, with a city population of 36,000, San Bruno had 57 sworn police officers, and all were funded by the general fund. Fast forward to the present, approximately a 45,000 population, the city has 16% less police officers and 26% less funded by the general fund. And what's noted is that in the last really 10 years, the city has been very successful in getting, at this point, a total of 6 positions funded by grants. One is the COPS grant, 2 positions funded by CanFran, as well as positions funded by Artichoke Joe's. And so it is certainly true by just about every measure, and our police chief presented on this. San Bruno does not have cops to meet the standard industry thresholds, and as it shows, has certainly more population and fewer law enforcement. Important to note when we talk about infrastructure, the city conducted an analysis in 2019. That's one of the other projects that was undertaken under the Fiscal Sustainability Project. The city implemented development impact fees, and in doing so, the city undertook an analysis and hired an outside consultant with expertise to analyze our infrastructure. And what that showed is that over the next 20 years, the city has a total infrastructure need in various categories: utilities, transportation, public safety, of $457 million. Development through the development impact fees, new development is estimated to pay $147 million. We're often asked the question, why can't new development pay for all of this? It is actually not legal for development impact fees to charge the full cost of the city's infrastructure to new development. They have to pay the fair share in a significant amount. But many of our infrastructure needs actually need to be borne and funded locally. And so what this analysis, again, that was conducted in 2019 showed is we have a remaining need of $310 million that we need to fund over the next 20 years. And those are sources that we cannot look toward development impact fees for. The next touch is, I think the city put forward an effort to improve roads in our roadways, and the city council put a measure before voters in 2019 for what was termed Measure G. And at that time, still remains true today that San Bruno streets and roads are rated some of the worst in the county. And the quality of our roads, if we do nothing, will decrease. And at that time, the city had an annual need to spend more than $6 million a year more on our roadway. And so I won't go into detail on this slide. City council and those of you that have seen it before know that roads are rated in what's called a PCI, a pavement condition index, an index that goes from 0 to 100. At this time, our PCI was 61, and so that was a fair category. But it would rapidly decline unless there was additional money applied to our road network. Happy to announce that we did look at the numbers. Today, our PCI is up to a 65, but that is still very much in fair condition. And what was true when the city put Measure G before voters, and what is still true today, is that the city needs additional money to improve its road network to get into that good category, to somewhere have a PCI of 70 to 100. And so I just want to note, because it's important, that the city was actually able to leverage Measure G this year and allocate a total of $5.9 million to road projects in the current year's budget. Now that was done, Measure G, you may remember, is only bringing in about $4 million a year. This was done only because we were able to have savings from the prior year, and so there could be an infusion of cash into our roadway fund. But what remains true is that we need to be spending upwards of $7.8 or nearly $8 million a year for our roads to increase to that 70% PCI level, really to have an appreciable, noticeable difference in the quality of our roads. Another significant infrastructure need of the city is our streetlight network. Members in the Rollingwood neighborhood will remember that we had a significant streetlight outage at the end of 21 and into early 2022. And so just to highlight about this, I know the city council knows this well because we've discussed it, and this slide is actually from a presentation from February of this year. The city maintains just over approximately 2,100 streetlights. Just under 300 of those are on what's called an RO circuit. It is a system that was built in the late 50s. It is certainly obsolete. PG&E transferred ownership to cities in the peninsula around the 1980s, and many cities around us, not all, have worked and funded replacement of their street light network. Ours, unfortunately, has not. We have not had the funds to replace our street light, our RO circuit network, and we have had over 14 outages since 2013. And when these outages happen, they are frequently prolonged, and the solutions are not inexpensive. And so at present, we still have 15% of our streetlight network on an RO circuit. I know the council and the community knows how challenging it is when the streetlights are out for months at a time. So in February of this year, we brought an item before City Council and were able to fund $500,000 toward the design of this project. But we knew that the project needed to be done in 2015. And at that time, the cost was $4 million, but the city did not have the funds. And so we know that the cost has certainly escalated, and we are now have the project the design phase partially funded. However, we know that the construction cost will be significantly more than $4 million, and we also know that the project is unfunded at this time. And the picture there shows the wires that were frayed when one of the street lights were removed. Another infrastructure note, it's important to note that the city is a 2 fire station county. We have 2 stations, Station 51 and Station 52. Your fire stations are more than 60 years old. They are 2 of the oldest non-retrofitted fire stations in the county, and one of them sits on the San Andreas Fault, nearly within just outside 100 feet of the San Andreas Fault. And so replacing these fire stations is of the utmost importance. Again, unfortunately, the city has not had the funds to do so. A design project is funded for Fire Station 52, and hopefully with some development impact funds, the city will be able to retrofit Fire Station 52, but that still leaves 51, or rebuild. The investigation is going on now. Another infrastructure challenge, and this one we just talked about, and it's our stormwater system. And so this slide comes from a 2021 presentation where we really highlighted that flooding is not limited to the lower levels of San Bruno. In fact, flooding can happen anywhere in San Bruno. And there's some pictures of flooding on Valleywood Drive in 2014 and flooding on San Bruno Avenue in 2014 and on Huntington, as well as a picture of the Crestmore Canyon slide that happened in 2019, a slide that cost approximately $1 million to remedy, and as we talked about briefly in the last item, was actually caused by our storm system. As well as we had a stormwater culvert that the council knows well in 2020 along Crystal Springs Road, not far from Juniper Serra Park. And so we know that our stormwater system, the funding is inadequate. As I stated in the prior item, the fund balance in that fund will be negative more than $1 million by the end of this year. The fees have not been adjusted since 1994, and there are over $50 million of estimated need for the system. $30 million was identified in 2014, but the city did not have the funds to address, and still does not have the funds to address. And the last picture in the bottom left-hand corner, council will remember that during our stormwater communications and conversations with the community, just happened to drive by a business that it was not raining, but they keep storm sandbags by their door because we know that our storm drain system in that particular location has flooded that business before. So if you were to drive by there, potentially even now, rain or shine, they keep storm sandbags by the door. And so in 2021, the city council directed that we do a community feedback survey, and over 400 residents and property owners responded to that survey. And what did we hear, right? We heard that repairing deteriorating pipes and infrastructure to prevent failures is a critical need and was rated highly. Improving our stormwater system to reduce pollutants that flow into the San Francisco Bay is important. Reducing risks of flooding to avoid costly repairs and impacts to local businesses and homes was important. And preventing flooding that obstructs residents and police was important. And so we know that from that survey. And as the community will remember well, we undertook a Prop 218 assessment in 21. And that was an assessment to increase stormwater fees on all properties, which shown here was part of the proposal was to increase fees on single-family homes by $9 a month, approximately $150 a year. Given the state-mandated process that we must follow for a Prop 218 assessment, all property owners had the option to vote. And the effort lost by 64%. And so the yeses were 1,833, the noes were 1,310. And so these efforts and all of the known infrastructure challenges that we have and the failure of the Prop 218 process really sets the foundation for why we're having this conversation we're having tonight. And so after the failure of the Stormwater Initiative and knowing our infrastructure challenges, the City Council had a meeting on October 26th of 21 where they discussed a wide variety of strategic initiatives, but in particular zoned in on what potential revenue measures made the City Council decide to put before voters for the November 22 election. And that really launched this effort. And there were a number of items that were noted, a potential increase in the gambling club tax that the city did not do, but those of you that have either read the local article in the Journal or watched our council meeting know that the city recently entered into an agreement with Artichoke Joe's for additional funds each year. The city also said, let's investigate a commercial property transfer tax and a city charter, and we'll talk shortly on the interface between those two. And so really fast forwarding to May of this current year, the City Council studied it, as we talked about before. There were a number of meetings, and the city established a subcommittee of 2 council members to work with city staff and our consultants put together a scientific poll of likely voters. And that poll was conducted between May 11th and May 18th. It was approximately 25 minutes in length. It targeted likely voters in the November 22 election. It was done by Godby Research, a professional pollster. The sample size was just under 450 with a margin error of just under 5%. And so I will not go through the entire presentation. The City Council received this entire presentation on June 7th, but I just want to highlight a few things. I want to highlight question 12. And question 12 is related to the item that's before you tonight. It asked, is there potentially support for a commercial real estate property transfer tax? And total support, definite yes and probable yes, was 55.4%. And this item needs a 50% plus one threshold at the ballot box. The City Council also tested a potential ballot measure. And the ballot question is shown there. I will not read it in its entirety, but it says, shall the City of San Bruno adopt a measure that would upgrade fire stations, modernize the library, improve neighborhood parks and ball fields, repair deteriorating infrastructure? There were a number of tests. There was an initial test and 4 subsequent ones. But overall, the percentage was 59 initially and 53.9. And you may say, well, wow, that's better than the, overall that's good. Well, a bond requires a 2/3 majority. And so you need 67% of voters to be in favor of that. And so the conclusions from this presentation from the city's poll consultants and ballot consultant are up above, and I will read these. It says the bond measure as tested, the bond measure, does not appear to be viable this year because primarily of the 2/3 approval threshold. Residents are price sensitive as regards to a potential future bond measure. There are strong majorities of voters that do prioritize these important capital improvements. We know that from our prior study. our prior community surveys, both in 21 and in 2019. San Bruno residents prioritize funding for streets, roads, fire stations, storm drains, parks, libraries, in that order. And it also concluded that a commercial transfer tax / city charter is viable for 22, with slight adjustments that the consultant recommended to the ballot language, and we have the final ballot language later on in this presentation. But again, that really sets the precipice in the history of why we're here today. And so the next section is we want to provide an overview of the draft city charter and talk more in detail about the action that is before the city council tonight. And in this section, we will review the process to establish a city charter. We will review the definition of commercial property, not always intuitive. We will also talk about the potential commercial property transfer tax rate analysis and the proposed rate. And we will also talk about the proposed powers of a charter city and the limits on city council powers. So why are we talking about a charter if we're talking about revenue and a potential commercial property transfer tax? It's important to know that in the state of California, there are two types of cities, not big and small, but there are general law cities and there are charter cities, and there are differences. Charter cities can impose a real property transfer tax, and there are other differences. General law cities cannot. And so if the city is to consider a commercial property transfer tax, we would need to develop a city charter. The council can draft the charter, and the council elected to do so. It requires 2 public hearings and a vote of the people at a statewide general election, and only a majority vote is required, so 50% plus 1. But the important note here is at a statewide general election, and so should the city council provide direction tonight, there's sufficient time for staff to do the necessary work to submit the forms to have that on the November ballot. But that it cannot be considered in 23 if it is not directed for the 22 budget. It would have to be considered in 24. So it's a statewide general election, even years, 22 or 24 or therefore. And on March 29th, the city council, as we discussed before, had a study session and really directed staff to develop, in quotes, a simple charter with an integrated commercial property transfer tax. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we talk about the powers of a charter city, because the city council was very clear that they did not want a broad sweeping charter. They wanted a charter that was narrowly tailored to a commercial property transfer tax. A little details about commercial property and the commercial property transfer tax. It's important to note that a commercial property transfer tax is paid upon sale. So it is not a tax that is paid every month, or every year. It is paid only upon a transacted sale. It can be negotiated who pays that between the buyer and the seller. And important, I want to pause a little bit to talk about the definition of commercial property that we use and that is commonly used. And so you often think of commercial property of an office building, hotel, retail structure, or an industrial property like a warehouse or manufacturing. But there's another division of commercial property, and in fact, there are residential commercial property brokers. And so commercial residential property is, in fact, commercial property. And for the definition that we use in the tax ordinance, it is commercial residential properties or multifamily housing of 5 units or greater. Commercial property also includes planned unit development by residential developers or vacant land. So it's important to note that in doing the due diligence to provide the city council with analysis, the city did conduct a simulation analysis of potential property transfer taxes. We pooled rates and studied 21 Bay Area cities that have a transfer tax. And then we estimated the revenue to San Bruno based on 5 prior years. And we should talk a little bit about why we did that. So a property transfer tax, by its very nature, is charged on properties that sell, which by their very nature will fluctuate with the economy. In a depressed economy, fewer commercial properties will sell. In a more robust economies, economy or year, more commercial properties will likely sell. And so the amount fluctuates. And so in order to project and provide a number that we felt could be reliable and as least subjective as possible, we looked at every commercial property that was sold in San Bruno the last 5 years. We were able to acquire the information from the county and ran the simulation based on that. And so depending on the rate, and we'll talk about that, the average annual tax revenue would have ranged from $61,000 to $2.7 million annually over the last 5 years. Again, it will fluctuate because it is based on the sales that happen in those years. But had we had a commercial property transfer tax, depending on the rate, the city could have received $61,000 or $2.7 million annually over the last 5 years. And again, we surveyed 21 tax rates, 21 cities, and the tax rates vary. Some cities have a simple percent. Other cities have a tiered rate based on the sales price. And the simple range from 0.055 to 1.3. And so this last slide I will not touch on in detail, but in one of our prior study sessions, we did go through this in detail. But I just wanted to provide that again here tonight because it's been several months. But a number of cities have rates that are tiered. So the more the property sells for, the higher the rate is. And so you can see here the highest tiered rate is properties that sell over $10 million is potentially 3%, with tiering going lower depending on the sell price. The proposed structure in San Bruno is a simple 1% rate. Again, that structure would apply to only residential properties that are 5 plexes or more, meaning all single-family homes, condominiums, and anything that's a 4-plex or below is exempt. Commercial properties of all of the types would pay the 1%. The estimated annual revenue, importing the note, estimated annual revenue at the 1% is approximately $1.1 million a year for the commercial residential. Just under $300,000, and for all of the commercial types, $758,000. Again, it will fluctuate on an annual basis. That concludes the majority of the slides that I will discuss, and I will now turn it over to our city attorney, Tricia Ortiz, to go through a few other mechanics of the proposed measure that is before the city council tonight.
Hello, Mayor Medina and City Council members. I'm your interim city attorney, Tricia Ortiz, and I'm going to go into some of the details of the measure, starting with the proposed charter. The proposed charter that the City Council is looking at is limited to only those powers that the city would have as a general law city, except for the power to impose a real property transfer tax. The charter has the purpose of authorizing the city to implement a commercial real property transfer tax if approved by the voters. But the details of the tax are presented to the voters in the form of an ordinance. And that ordinance provides that commercial property, it provides all the details of how the tax is imposed and how it's collected and what property is subject to the tax. And it defines commercial property as all property, excluding property developed with a residential structure that contains less than 5 dwelling units. So, as the city manager was pointing out, this would include office buildings, hotels, retail structures, warehouses and manufacturing, commercial residential and multifamily housing with dwelling units of 5 or more. Planned unit development by residential developers, and vacant land. So what does it mean to be a charter city? A charter city has the power to regulate all municipal affairs. And there's not a set definition for what a municipal affair is. It's determined by the courts on a case-by-case basis. However, there's some well-settled examples of what is deemed a municipal affair. Those include prevailing wages and the procedures for adopting resolutions and ordinances. Examples of things that are not municipal affairs would be the Brown Act. So a charter city has the power to regulate all municipal affairs. However, there are significant limits language of the charter itself. The second, and here I want to highlight that the City Council's provided direction to prepare a draft charter that specifies that the city's powers under the charter are limited only to the powers it could exercise as a general law city, with the one exception of allowing for a commercial real property transfer tax. Another significant limit on a charter city's power is the California Constitution, and I'll mention that a little bit more in a few minutes. And then finally, the United States Constitution. In other words, when you go to the voters to have them approve a charter, you're limited to the powers that are in the charter without going back to the voters, and you can't do anything the California Constitution or the United States Constitution prohibits. So the California constitutional limits on charter cities is relevant to the city's proposed charter because of the integral tax measure. The California Constitution limits all cities' revenue powers, starting back with Proposition 13, Propositions 218, and Propositions 26. And what all of these constitutional amendments that were approved by the voters, what they have the effect of doing is saying that no city, charter or general law, can impose, increase, or extend a tax without going to the voters for approval. What this means is if the city submits the tax ordinance to the voters and the voters approve that ordinance, the city council cannot come back and amend that ordinance to increase the tax unless it goes back to the voters and gives them an opportunity to amend that ordinance. So here we are with the draft ballot question that provides this measure to the voters. And what it says is to maintain critical San Bruno city services and programs, including public safety, streets, parks, and recreation, shall a measure to adopt a San Bruno city charter and an ordinance to establish an ongoing 1% commercial real estate property transfer tax paid by buyers or sellers of commercial property, exempting all single-family homes and multifamily buildings up to and including 4 units, providing an estimated $1 million annually, all funds benefiting San Bruno be adopted. Here's a brief overview of the timeline that got us to this point. As the city manager described earlier, there are specific procedures prescribed in the California Government Code for how a city can consider becoming a charter city. That includes 2 hearings with at least 30 days between the 2 hearings. And then following the second hearing, at least 21 days must pass before the city council considers whether or not it will submit the charter to the voters. So here we are on August 3rd, the last hearing being on July 12th, and presenting you a resolution that provides the authorization to put this measure on the ballot. And we're here today because the deadline for submitting all ballot measures for the November 8th election is August 12th. So by approving the resolution today, it gives the city clerk time to submit the measure to the county elections officer. So in order to present this measure to the voters, the city council would adopt a resolution, and the title of the resolution is a resolution of the city council of the city of San Bruno submitting to the voters at the November 8th, 2022 general municipal election a measure that proposes a city charter be adopted to change the city of San Bruno from a general law city to a charter city, and to authorize a real property transfer tax, and that proposes adoption of an ordinance authorizing a commercial real property transfer tax, requesting that such election be consolidated with the statewide general election held on that date, making a determination of exemption under CEQA, and taking certain other actions. So here's what the next steps are. There'll be questions on this presentation, an opportunity for public comment, discussion, and then the City Council will consider the resolution to submit the measure to the voters. And just one note, because the measure has as an integral part of it a general tax, California law requires that prior to submitting a general tax to the voters, the resolution approving that the tax measure is submitted to the voters must be approved by a 2/3 vote of the City Council. And so that would be 4 out of 5. And so with that, we are available to take any questions.
Thank you both for your information and presentation. And at the time, are there any questions, colleagues, on the presentation? Seeing none at this time, we will go ahead and at this time, members of the public that are here, I would ask if you could, hold on, Councilmember Hamilton, you're on mute, but your hand is up now.
I apologize, Mayor. I couldn't get my
no worries.
My
but before you, as your cat goes by, pause for a moment. Members of the public, if you could raise your hand, virtual hand, if you wish to speak, and this would be the opportunity again. Please to raise your hand now, and so we can get you in the queue and see how many folks that we may be having this evening. Appreciate it, Councilmember Hamilton.
Thank you. So I have just a few clarifying questions based on concerns that were expressed to me via direct communication and that I read on social media. I just have a few clarifying questions. The most important parts about the presentation that we just heard. So the first question, and I guess this could go to the city attorney. I guess all 4 questions can go to the city attorney. Is it true that tonight we are not voting to approve the move to a charter city, nor are we voting to approve a commercial real property transfer tax, but instead we are voting whether to place a measure for these on the November ballot so that the voters of San Bruno can decide this important issue for themselves?
Sure. Mayor Medina, Councilmember Hamilton, as mentioned during the presentation, a city council cannot approve charter, nor can it adopt a tax without going to the voters. So your action tonight merely submits the measure to the voters at the November 8th election.
Great, thank you. Next question. If the proposed measure makes it onto the ballot and is approved by the voters, would the city of San Bruno or the city council be given any new powers to enact any taxes at all beyond the proposed 1% one-time commercial real property transfer tax, which would affect only commercial properties and residential properties of 5 units or more?
Mayor Medina, Councilmember Hamilton, the charter is very limiting, and it specifies that the powers the city could exercise as a charter city are limited only to those powers that a general law city could exercise, with the exception of getting the power to impose a commercial real property transfer tax. Regardless of whether you're a charter city or a general law city, in no case can any city or any governmental agency impose or increase or extend a tax without getting voter approval. So if this measure is approved by the voters, they are approving the charter and they are approving the ordinance. And the city council could not, and the ordinance codifies in the municipal code the provisions of the tax. And the city council could not go back and amend that ordinance and those provisions in the municipal code to increase the tax without going back to the voters.
Okay, great, thank you. So the last 2 questions are just nuances of that same answer. So if the proposed measure makes it onto the ballot and is approved by the voters, would the city council or the city of San Bruno be granted any additional powers of any kind beyond what we already have as a general law city? So we've already ruled out taxes, but are there any other powers we would be granted in the way that we form the charter?
The way that Mayor Medina, Councilmember Hamilton, the way that the current charter is structured, the only power that the city could exercise as a charter city would be the power to impose a commercial real property transfer tax, which a general law city could not do.
Great, thank you. And then my last question, and it's a little bit belaboring, but this was the number one concern that was that I've heard from constituents. If the proposed measure makes it onto the ballot and is approved by the voters, could this or a future city council extend the tax to affect the sales of single-family homes and condos? Or would such a move require this entire process of public hearings, placement of a measure on the ballot, and approval of that measure by majority of voters before it could ever happen?
Mayor Medina, Councilmember Hamilton, the ordinance that's proposed to be approved by the voters provides a definition of real property that is subject to the tax to be strictly limited to land property with structures with excluding all property, excluding property with residential structures of 4 units or less. To extend that to any other, to extend or to eliminate the exclusion, you'd have to amend the ordinance. And to amend the ordinance, you'd have to go to the voters. There's no way you can do that without getting voter approval.
Got it. Thank you very much for clarifying those important points.
Thank you, Councilmember. If there are no other questions on the presentation from colleagues, we have quite a few speakers, which is fine and great. We look forward to hearing from you. You'll each have up to 3 minutes. Please be mindful of that. And the 3 minutes just keep us going because we have about 16 or so speakers. I would ask if a speaker prior to you has basically said everything. Certainly you're welcome to come in and just say, I concur with the last speaker, but certainly the time is yours. And Lupita, if you could assist me in bringing in members of the public, please.
For individuals that have dialed into the meeting, if you would like to raise your hand, please press *9. The first speaker I will be bringing in is Jamie Montezon. Jamie?
Hi, thank
Whenever
you.
You're ready.
Yes, I'm ready. Mayor Medina, City Council, and staff, thank you for listening in on me this evening. My name is Jamie Montezon, and I'm representing myself as a business owner, as a 30-year resident of San Bruno, and a former CEO of a very successful Chamber of Commerce. I'm speaking this evening to express my strong opposition to the proposed city charter and commercial real property transfer tax. As a small investor, I'm concerned about how giving the authority to the City Council to tax its residents will hurt my business and my family and my neighbors too. Your proposed real property tax will have a direct impact on my life savings, rental income, and inheritance for my own children. What if I need to sell my property or take care of any health-related family or spouse expenses? The inclusion of multifamily residential housing in your tax is especially hurtful because of its impact on tenants. Costs would be passed on to the renters. Why would you want to make housing more costly at this time, especially for our most vulnerable residents? For these and so many other reasons, I ask that you vote no this evening on even putting it on the ballot. I think it costs money. I don't know how much, but I'm sure there's a big investment for the city to be doing this, and I do not agree. I think there's a lot more money that you need that this can do. This is not going to do much for the city at all. And that's my opinion, and thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Andriana Shea. Andriana, whenever you're ready.
I'm ready. Can you hear me?
Yes, you may begin.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, and good evening, Mayor Medina, council members, city staff, and community members. I don't normally make public comments at council meetings, but I felt compelled to do so tonight as a native San Bruno resident who has watched neighboring cities grow and thrive while we continue to live with dilapidated roads, fire stations, storm drains, and other facilities that were outlined here tonight. We have over $300 million in unfunded needs with no new revenue sources in sight. We need to be exploring any and all options in order to start addressing critical city needs that impact all of you and all of us. The city charter with the commercial transfer tax will help fund these needs, and it will not impact everyday San Bruno residents. Despite what special interests will have you believe, this tax does not impact everyday residents. This 1% tax will only impact commercial properties. To me, this is a no-brainer, but you are not even deciding on that tax today. The only thing you are deciding is whether to allow your constituents to have a voice and decide whether commercial interests should supersede their own. As our elected representatives, I implore you to not bow to special interests and to allow the people of the community that you serve to make this critical decision. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Jeremy. Jeremy, whenever you're ready,
I'm ready.
you may begin.
Well said, Adriana, well said. I don't know how the council can question this topic. Just like Adriana said, when you have $300 million of unfunded capital improvement projects currently before you, leading to immediate sinkholes that need to be filled and the dispersal of $100,000 at a time. Again, I appreciate Tom Hamilton's repeated attempts to clarify the issue, because I do believe that it will be made quite murky, that this will be a ballot issue if approved by the City Council, and it will be ultimately voted by the residents of San Bruno. Again, we have $300 million of unfunded capital improvement projects, and $1 million would help. I have the 2014 storm drain master plan in front of me, and I see about 13 different priority 1 and priority 2 projects here. Some pipes were constructed 30 years before Seabiscuit was born. Pretty interesting. And to follow on Jovan's comments, we have a significant revenue challenge that must be addressed somehow. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Ann Oliva. Ann, whenever you're ready, you may begin. Ann Oliva?
I'm here. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and members of the San Bruno City Council. Thank you for this opportunity to speak on the San Bruno proposed city charter and commercial property transfer tax. Like you said, my name is Ann Oliva, and I'm a realtor here and a business owner in San Bruno. The $3 million of unfunded infrastructure and needs from the city is quite alarming. I thought this was something that was going to be a small tax. I failed to see how a council could take a crystal ball, not knowing how much this would bring in, and expect that they could put something into a general fund to take care of this. I am obviously calling to voice my strong opposition to the charter and property city tax. And at a recent public hearing, one of the council members said the only people he heard from were in opposition were realtors, rather dismissively. Why wouldn't you want to hear from realtors? Realtors like me who live and work here, and our clients who buy homes in San Bruno, who then become the constituents, are invested in this community. They are most impacted. Another component that a council member said is that they should not leave any money on the table. May I remind you, council, whose money is this? The proposed tax is a burden of funding general city services on a narrow segment of the population, including housing providers, small businesses, and small mom and pop investors. This is another form of double taxation. Property owners already pay into the general fund through property taxes and other taxes for city services, including police and fire. Future city councils could pass even more erroneous taxes, including on single-family homeowners and condo owners. This would add to the negative impacts on housing, which we are already experiencing higher interest rates, sky-high housing costs, and inflation. I respectfully ask you to certainly vote no on to the charter city designation and to the commercial tax. And please, let's figure out a solution to the 3 million unfunded projects that need to be addressed in the city of San Bruno. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
We'll now be bringing in Stephen Seymour. Stephen Seymour, whenever you're ready, you may begin.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Well, it's interesting to listen to the first four speakers, but I definitely sit on Adriana and Jeremy's side, because what we're being asked to do tonight is not make a decision that's going to impact anyone. What we're being asked to do, or what you're being asked to do, is make a decision whether or not your constituents should decide the fate of this ordinance. And I think it would be tough for anyone to argue that your constituents shouldn't be the ones that make the final decision. The last time we had a meeting 21 days ago, one of the council members said that he didn't think that, and I'm paraphrasing now, but he didn't think that the residents of San Bruno would be able to vote on this in an educated way. And I really think that that's what we need to be talking about. We need to be talking about how to educate the public about what they will be voting on in November. There are 21 Bay Area cities who already have transfer taxes. And I'm sure that in these cities, that these are some of the hottest real estate cities in the Bay. Alameda, Berkeley, Hayward, San Mateo, San Rafael, San Ramon, Santa Clara, Santa Cruz, Monterey, Mountain View, Palo Alto, Redwood City, San Francisco, San Jose, even Sacramento. I've heard the argument before that passing a 1%, let me remind everybody on here, that we're talking about a 1% transfer tax. We're passing a 1% transfer tax. It's being done in more than 120 cities in California already, and it doesn't seem to impede business. But bottom line is, I believe this is a decision that should be made by the constituents, by your constituents, the same ones that went to the polls and voted you in. Why you wouldn't allow the public to make this decision, or better yet, why you would think that you should be able to make it for the public tonight, defies logic. It's not democratic. So I hope that, I know already, based on the conversation, the public conversation 21 days ago, that 3 of you lean very heavily towards allowing your constituents to make this decision, and that 2 of you are somewhere in the middle in terms of trying to decide whether or not the voters should make this decision. I implore that all of you, 5 of you tonight, send this to the ballot so that your constituents can make the decision and you have time to educate them so that they can make the right vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Tina Wong. Tina Wong, whenever you're ready.
Yes, this is Tina Wong, and thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. I am a small business, women-owned in San Bruno, and since year 2000, we witnessed the ups and downs in San Bruno in the past 20-something years. And San Bruno small businesses are still struggling to stay open due to the pandemic hit. And I mean, with this increase for imposing this transfer tax, I mean, mostly who will be affected would be small business owners, and also would be the tenants who live in 5 units and up apartments. You know, because I'm a small business owner, I have to pay rent, and I mean, I wish I have owned a property so I wouldn't be imposed of such an increase. I mean, with retail and commercial property, we as a small business owner actually pay for the property tax. Any increase, it will be on us. So it's not on the owners, because it just can't be transferred to the tenants. So I hope you understand that and then there will be another rent increase. You know, a lot of restaurants have closed already. and they cannot even afford to open, and they're trying to survive, and they're trying to open. I hope you really look into this. We are all suffering from the pandemic, and just not now for the increase or the impose of the transfer tax. It's not a big, huge number that what San Bruno needed. I mean, City San Bruno should be considered one of the richest city in the whole peninsula in the San Mateo County, because we have Out of Check Joe's who is paying 7 cents per dollar on the tax. And I don't quite duplicate why there's so much shortfall on the expenses. On the income. We have the hotel, yes, because it's being impacted by the pandemic. Okay, you probably collect. Maybe there's less people gambling, I guess. So we should have a lot of money. And property tax is not the cheapest in the peninsula either. We're paying a lot of high water bill, and also a lot of actually property tax is not compared with other neighboring city, which is considered rather expensive. And so please oppose to this this proposal. Don't try to impose another tax on small property owners or small business owners or even on tenants. I really, really appreciate it if you consider that. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is listed under the name Owner. Owner, you may speak whenever you're ready.
Hello. Yes, hi, council members. This is Jim Evangelist. I'm so away. I would like to, first of all, register my disappointment that this meeting was held at 5 o'clock. It's a very early start time. I think most of the residents in San Bruno still aren't even home yet. I would like to address the two council members who seem to be in transfer tax in the city charter staff. Taxes and on the whole,
I'm sorry. Can we pause the clock, please? Pause clock. And and I'm sorry. We're having a hard time hearing you consistently. It kind of comes in and then it fades out. Just if you could readjust.
Philosophically, you may not agree with this tax, but you are overstepping the implied agreement of representative democracy by voting, if you did vote, to not allow the residents of San Bruno to decide if this transfer tax should be applied and we transition to a charter city. A list of community improvement projects that have not been addressed over I've been here essentially that are always told us because of lack of funding. And that would be Florida Park, Central Park, San Bruno Cable, the streetlight replacements, converting 7 areas in the city of San Bruno from the series circuit streetlights to parallel circuits, downtown renovation, the city welcome monument at San Bruno Avenue, and at the train station. And this, the storm drain issue is going to come and haunt us for voting that down to fund that, and we're going to have to come up with money from someplace. I don't think we get a lot of money from this every year, but up to this point, we have potentially lost, since this was first brought up in 2019, as much as $4 million that have already been handed to the city of San Bruno if we transition. I really encourage the council members that are hesitant to put this before the voters to let us decide. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker I will be bringing in is Fernando Pena. Fernando, whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Thank you. Mayor Medina and members of the City Council, good evening. My name is Fernando Pena. I am the Government Affairs Director for the San Mateo County Association of Realtors, SAMCAR. Thank you for the opportunity to voice my concern regarding the proposed general to charter city designation change and new commercial property transfer tax. I am calling in strong opposition to this proposal. Poll numbers show it's not a good time to ask the voters for a new tax. The council withdrew a bond measure that would have generated $124 million. The focus on 2022 is the most viable year versus 2024 is really short-sighted. I fail to see the nexus between the capital needs of the city that were outlined this evening to the small tax. $124 million in a bond that could be passed in 2024. Your survey to residents regarding taxing commercial property owners was within the margin of error, showing that it could be defeated in November. Changing from a general to a charter city designation will be costly from a legal perspective, including hiring outside counsel. The tax places the burden of funding general city services on a narrow segment of the population who sell or buy a building, including small mom and pop investors. Storm drain fees and other measures have been rejected, that's true, in the past, but one segment of the population should not be pitted against one another. Historically, proper transfer taxes have hurt small businesses who rent space in mid-size or mixed-use buildings. Owners of these buildings in many cases are not large corporations and do not have the capacity to or tend to pass on increased taxes in the form of increased rents. And despite your assurances that this does not include single-family homes at this time, future city councils can and could pass even more onerous taxes, including on single-family homeowners and condo owners. They will have the authority to do it if you put it on the ballot asking the two questions. The November ballot asks two questions. One, give us the authority, and two, impose a property transfer tax. So in the future, a future city council will only have to ask one question, a new property tax, and that could be imposed on single-family homeowners and condo owners. And according to staff analysis, in a bad year, this will bring only $60,000 per year, not $1 million as has been advertised. So this is really not the right time to impose another tax on the residents of San Bruno. It is also the wrong mechanism to employ. I respectfully ask you to vote no on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Paul Leo. Paul Leo, you may begin whenever you're ready.
Yes, sorry, it's Paul Beaudreau. Paul Leo is my middle name. But at any rate, thank you so much for allowing me to be counsel. I am a real estate agent, and I was asked here by a few of my clients who are residents of San Bruno and other clients who own property in San Bruno to speak on their behalf and express their opposition to oppose the proposed city charter and commercial property transfer tax. I also wanted to share some of my industry knowledge to help kind of explain some major pitfalls with that transfer tax in general. I mean, first, I think we have to make clear is we already have a transfer tax in the form of the county transfer tax, was at $1.10 per thousand. And cities throughout the county do split this with the county 50-50. And by adopting its own city transfer tax, what's important, I think the citizens need to realize is that the city then forfeits this portion of the tax they're receiving. And so local residents are not just paying more for a city government, but also more for a county government. But more importantly, which is already alluded to in your own study, is that the transfer taxes are an extremely volatile and unreliable source of revenue. I think by your own city staff analysis, between 61,000 to 2.7 million, I mean, that's a quite large fluctuation. Furthermore, it is hard to forecast commercial properties because they sell a lot less frequently than single-family homes. I mean, case in point, the Tan Fran, I think one reason why that number skewed so highly is that the Tan Fran shopping complex sold for about $364 million. Of course, that's going to be a big windfall, but how often do properties like that sell? It's a once in 100 years. Another example of how these transfer taxes can fluctuate is the city of San Mateo, which is one of only two cities in San Mateo County here that has a transfer tax. And in 2018 and 19, they had a revenue of $13.9 million, and then it dropped to $9.1 in 2019 and 20, even though real estate sales or values were going up. This dropped 34%. So again, regardless of what the economy does, it's extremely hard to again forecast, which would make your job of budgeting some of these and funding some of these projects even more difficult. Now that brings me to what my clients fear the most is because of this volatility, ultimately that this transfer tax will fail. And then just like all the other cities that we've given examples of who have this transfer tax, San Francisco, Oakland, Berkeley, they all have transfer taxes on single family homes. So that's my big fear for my clients and your constituents. So I understand that council and staff have an extremely difficult job to balance a budget and provide for services. But I simply want to ask and respectfully ask that you do not move forward with putting the transfer tax and the city charter on the ballot this coming fall. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Elaine Robertson. Elaine, you may begin whenever you're ready. Elaine Robertson.
Mayor Medina and City Council members, I strongly urge you to vote no to submit to the November ballot the potential city charter and commercial property transfer tax. I think it's so wrong for commercial property owners to carry the full burden of what residents of San Bruno may benefit from. Please, I urge you to vote no. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Sandra Perez Vargas. Sandra, you may begin whenever you're ready. Sandra Perez Vargas.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. You may begin.
Thank you. As a true believer in democracy, I believe it's critical that this goes to a vote to our residents. I mean, we elect people trusting that they'll do the best, but make some of the best decisions, but ultimately we need to be voting on this. I think it's completely democratic to do otherwise, especially at a time when from a national level, there's so many attempts to take our voting rights. And, you know, I really find it questionable that Sam Carr really has the interests of our residents. I mean, that is just so questionable, or that some of the largest realtors are concerned about your average folks. It just doesn't ring true to me. So I really believe just take it to a vote. We have to consider our community as a whole, not one realtor or one business owner. It's our community as a whole that needs to improve. And I just think if we're not allowed to vote, people are not going to really trust the council. That it doesn't make sense to me. You know, let us choose. That's why we voted you in. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Claudia Quinn. Claudia, you may begin whenever you're ready. Claudia Quinn.
Yes. Good evening. Yes, my husband and I, we live in San Bruno and we vote here. We strongly support the creation of a city charter and the transfer tax on commercial property, and also term limits too, but we haven't gotten there yet. But I find it interesting that the opposing opinions, I wonder how many of these people actually live in San Bruno. I wonder if some of these people that are opposing this legislation or even bringing it to the ballot are people who live in 21 cities that are now benefiting from the fact that their cities have transfer taxes and they have probably some better services than we do. Yes, I strongly agree with Stephen Seymour and Sandra that say bring it to the voters. We voted for city council. You need to let us speak and let our opinions be known, and I think it would be such an obstacle if you stop it now and don't bring it to the voters. Well, that would be something we'll have to think about when it's time to vote people in again. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is under the name Tim. Tim, you may begin whenever you're ready.
Good evening. Thank you. I'm a voter. Me and
my wife vote here, and we like to see improvement in San Bruno. We've seen some happen. It happens slow, but with this additional revenue from the transfer tax would be great. It would help us with a lot of things that are needed in our city. Past administration, hasn't been great and hasn't addressed issues that we need. So yeah, we need to move forward with this and let the voters, the residents that live here every day, want to live here, they want to stay here. So I believe we need this revenue as well. So yeah, I mean, our police, we need more police officers. We need a safer San Bruno. We need we need people to be comfortable and safe and feel safe and lower crime and other things. But yeah, we need revenue for everything that we need to get accomplished in San Bruno to improve our sewers, water, you name it, etc. And my wife, Raina, would like to make a few comments as well. Thank you so much. Have a great night. Please let us vote.
Hi. Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I totally agree with previous speakers, and I think that you need to put it forward for the voters to decide. This is what is called democracy, not a group of people who's saying, oh no, it's not going, do not vote for that. We want to see it. We need to decide. The voters need to decide whether this not just a small group of people. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you both for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Lee Ginsburg. Lee Ginsburg, you may begin whenever you're ready. Lee Ginsburg?
Okay, now we go. Okay. Thank you very much, Mayor Medina and City Council. Everyone's saying bring it to the voters, but it's very interesting. I'm a property owner in San Bruno and a business owner. I do not live in San Bruno, so I can't vote. But all the voters want to increase my costs. And then I'm just going to pass it on to the tenants. So it does affect your people without even realizing it. There are so many other ways to get money. The City Council turned down a lot of money when they turned down Whole Foods and Mills Plaza project. That would have helped out quite a bit, probably more than this. I believe your $1 million estimate is way inflated of what it's going to bring in, because in there, as I mentioned, you had the Tan Fran sale and the Google sale. Those are sales that happen once in a lifetime. We have no other large properties in San Bruno that's going to generate that money. So it's going to be closer to maybe $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, and possibly as low as $60,000, as you stated yourself. So I don't think the money is the issue, and you're having people vote who are not paying anything. There are a good majority of the small property owners are mom and pops who live in San Bruno as well. And you gave a great presentation, but I didn't see the cost of drawing up a charter and maintaining the charter in any of your statistics here. So between the cost involved, the less money that's really coming in, and as Paul mentioned, you will lose the county transfer tax, your share of it. I don't think we're getting any money. I think you should try to look at a bigger picture and maybe approve some of the projects that we turned down that would be bringing in more money, sales tax, and all that. Thank you. I urge you to vote no on this.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is caller with last three digits of their phone number, 357. Caller, you may begin whenever you're ready. phone number ending in 357.
Maybe you can remind how to take off mute on via cell, please.
I believe it is *3. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, *6 to unmute. Hi, this is Chris Perez. I live in San Bruno, and I just called on behalf of myself and my husband, David Grom, and we do support the ballot measure going on the ballot this November for the charter city. We appreciate the time and the energy it took to bring this to the other public meetings and to think about this, to think about being a charter city. City of San Mateo is a charter city. They're flourishing. They're one of the biggest cities here in San Mateo County, and they have huge income. It's going great for them. We need that. As was mentioned earlier by the city manager, there are significant financial challenges facing San Bruno as well as every city. And we're looking for ways to get money in. And that's going to come, we don't want all our eggs in one basket. So it's going to come in many baskets. Someone said that it was a once in a lifetime, the sale over here with YouTube. But let's not miss the next once in a lifetime. We don't know what that's going to be. So my other concern, and I'll direct it to Sam Carr and to Fernando Pena, is that Sam Carr is constantly lobbying in this county for their own good. They support council candidates. They support their parent organization, the California Association of Realtors, was involved in the hit pieces on Giselle Hale. Sam Carr is pushing councils to make choices that help Sam Carr's bottom line. They're not a benevolent organization. They're not looking for solutions for the city's issues. They're a lobby that supports their profit only. The 1% transfer tax will be on community property or on commercial property only, and it'll be helpful to our city. Tom Hamilton asked those questions again and again. It's not going to affect homeowners. We need to Sam Carr will make fear dominate the way people vote. It's not going to affect homeowners. Sam Carr has come out opposed in Half Moon Bay against their efforts to deal with climate change. They do things that don't make any sense for the greater good. So almost without fail, my best interests have been served by voting the opposite of whatever Sam Carr is saying. Have no doubt that they only have their own best interest in mind. And I think that was it. I really appreciate what Steve Seymour and Adriana said at the beginning of the comments. I feel the same way. Put it to the voters. Let's just decide. I really appreciate you hearing me tonight, and thank you for bringing this up. And thank you for wanting to put it on the ballot. That's all.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Nestor Icaza. Nestor Icaza, whenever you're ready, you may begin. Nestor Icaza?
Yes, hi. Thank you, Mayor Medina and San Bruno City Council. I want to speak out against this proposal and ask you to vote no. I won't say and repeat things that have already been said, but I do want to focus on a couple points. If I was seeing it correctly, the budget deficit in San Bruno is somewhere around $300 million. In the best case scenario, this will bring $2 million in revenue to the city annually. Now, it just follows logic that to fill the rest of that, once you put a commercial tax on real estate transfers, you will seek to put a residential transfer tax. Because when you have a deficit of $300 million, it only makes sense. Now, one thing that I don't like about how it's currently set up, this proposal, is that it's being tied to commercial real estate transfer. But when it's put on the ballot, that sounds great. But what people aren't going to realize is that this rechartering of the city is going to eventually open the floodgates so that their single-family homes can also be taxed at transfer. So I'm all about democracy, and if this does pass, the voters will ultimately decide. But I think that currently, what I was reading that was presented earlier, it is not clear to the voters that this rechartering will affect all real property. Immediately, it will only affect commercial property, sure, because you kind of tied that in. But it will affect all real property down the line. And because of the budget deficit, it's just logical that the next source of revenue will be single-family homes and condos. So I oppose it as it's currently written. I encourage you to vote no, and thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
I will now be bringing in Rovi Lynn Antonio. Rovi Lynn Antonio, whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Good evening, Mayor Medina and City Council. I'm Rovi Lynn Antonio with the California Apartment Association, a trade organization representing local rental housing providers and operators. On behalf of our members, we caution the City of San Bruno in supporting any policies or ballot measures that would increase the cost of housing. A real property tax does increase the cost of housing since the additional tax will add to the total cost to acquire housing. Housing costs in the Bay Area are already high. Please do not add another expense. The other concern we have is the lack of transparency in this ballot proposal. Despite being labeled as a commercial property tax, this measure is beyond that. This proposed tax does include residential buildings. It does not matter whether the property is 5 units, 10 units, or 20 units. This is a tax on homes. For full transparency reasons, San Bruno should make it very clear that a decision to move to a charter city is to have the authority to impose a real property tax, which includes single-family homes, and that commercial property tax will indeed add a new tax on homes. Please consider the current economic climate we are in and reconsider any permanent taxes, especially ones without a sunset, like this being proposed. This is not a time to pass new taxes when we are also recovering from the pandemic and the fiscal conditions are exacerbated by the current high inflation. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Karen Cunningham. Karen Cunningham, whenever you're ready.
Good evening, San Bruno. This is Karen Cunningham in Terro, San Bruno, my real estate office, and also the admin for San Bruno Life. And I can't believe some of the stuff I'm hearing, especially on Sam Carr speaking on my behalf, that we're supposed to be voting no on this. You know, we have had the most transparency in our city council over the last couple of years than more than decades before. And they're looking out for our city's best interest. We're not going to be experiencing any single family home tax or restaurant tax or condo tax or any of the stuff that Sam Carr's fear-mongering people are putting forth to the city, right? So we've got people worried that they're going to be taxed the next time they sell their house or their condo or their restaurant. No, that's not going to happen. We've been losing millions because we haven't taxed places like YouTube, Walmart, and sales like that. No, we haven't gained a cent from them in transfer taxes. But now we have the opportunity, right? What is the expression? The rich get richer and the poor get poorer, right? And that's what's happening in San Bruno. Who's getting poorer? Yes, the residents are. And the only way for us to get some improvements in the city is to have this charter tax and put it to the people to vote on that. on the ballot so that people can vote. I'm out.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Mitch Spiegel. Mitch Spiegel, whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Hello, everyone. Mitch Spiegel here. I'm a realtor, and I wanted to call in today to oppose this proposal. The number one thing that I think that I've heard time and time again from some of the other speakers in the council is that this is the way to, manage and to make up a budget deficit. And I think that when we can look at the stats and we look at, how this tax is going to be laid out, it's not the way to do it, right? It's irresponsible to plan out a city's worth of budget on a tax that may be high, may be low, maybe 60 grand, maybe 1 million. It's irresponsible to plan that way. And I think when the talks of people saying that, it's put it to democracy and put it to the voters, what we're talking about today is the way that San Bruno governs itself and also the way that they plan things out. Now, I've heard, many of you have heard the same saying, right? Don't count your chickens before they hatch. There are two types of people who are going to count those chickens and say, this tax will make $100 million a year. And there's people who say, you know what, we need to figure out a more sustainable way to propose a tax that's going to be, again, a sales tax or bond measure that can actually measurably increase increase the tax base, but also decrease our budget deficit. So I would ask the council in the simple terms is that we know that these taxes, when a property sells, that tax passes down to our lower echelon of our socioeconomic status. That's our renters. A 5-unit building that sells San Bruno and has to pay a transfer tax, that goes to renters who are going to be living at that apartment. They pay that tax. If there's a budget deficit and this is money that needs to be made up, let's do it in a sustainable way. Let's do it in a real way. Let's put a bond measure on the ballot. Let's put a sales tax on the ballot. But let's not put, our eggs in this basket of something that may or may not, again, 60 grand on a deficit like this. Let's go back to the drawing board a little bit. I think we say no to this, and I think you go back stronger and say, how are we going to do this sustainably, measurably, in a way that doesn't trickle down to our renters and our small business owners here in San Bruno. My vote is no, and I hope you guys join me. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Are there any other folks that wish to speak this evening? Because once you only get to speak once. If you've already spoken, you can't speak again. But is there any folks that have not spoke that would like this opportunity? Because once we bring it back to the council, that will be it for public comment. Last call for any speakers at this time.
I see one hand raised. Jeremy Dunk. Jeremy Dunk, I will bring you in. Jeremy, whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, first I'd just like to say I'd like to echo Stephen Seymour, Andrew Shea, and Sandra's comments. The suggestions that it's not enough to close the gap, that's obviously true. There have already been attempts to do bond measures. First of all, bond measures for capital projects make sense. For revenue gaps that are consistent doesn't make sense. Parcel tax didn't pass. A couple different attempts to raise revenues, different paths have not worked. We have acute problems and a persistent revenue gap. This is a partial solution. This is something that's possibly controllable. I wouldn't mind if real estate commissions were diminished a bit by this. The idea that, this will just be passed on to the renters, that is an individual moral choice of every property owner. So I'll just leave it there. I support sending this to the voters, and I support anything that we can do to support our community, to make a maintainable infrastructure, to share the burden of living together. That's it.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Andrew Montezon. Andrew Montezon, whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. My name is Andrew Montezon. I represent owner in Burlingame of a multi-unit property. I'm speaking this evening to express my strong opposition to the proposed city charter and commercial real property transfer tax. As a small investor, I'm concerned about how giving the authority to the City Council to tax its residents will hurt my business and my family. Your proposed real property transfer tax will have a direct impact on my life, savings, rental income, and the inheritance of my children. And what if I need to sell my property to take care of any health-related family or spouse expenses? The inclusion of multifamily residential housing in your tax is especially hurtful because of its impact on tenants. Costs would be passed on to renters. Why would you want to make housing more costly at this time, especially for our most vulnerable residents? For these and so many other reasons, I ask you to vote no this evening on the proposed city charter and commercial real property transfer tax. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you for your comments. At this time, I'm seeing no other hands up, and I'll ask Lupita just to confirm that, please.
Yes, Mayor Medina, I do not see any other hands up.
Okay, thank you kindly. We will bring it back to the City Council. There we all are. Okay, and first and foremost, thank you to all of the speakers for being here this evening, waiting, and giving your comments and thoughts. Thank you. And now we'll bring it back to City Council for additional questions, comments, and deliberation. Councilmember Hamilton.
Thank you, Mayor Medina. And thank you to all of our speakers who dialed in to voice their opinions on this issue. There's been quite a bit of communication going around in the past couple of weeks regarding this issue. I've received communications from representatives from our local commercial real estate community, and even all the way to anonymous letters put in my mailbox. Many of the communications make liberal use of fear-mongering, trying to convince residents that this is a move to eventually tax single-family homes, when it absolutely is not. In order for the tax to be extended to single-family homes, or in fact to be changed in any way at all, Council would first need to direct staff to prepare a revised charter. I would oppose that, by the way. That charter would need to go through this same process of public hearings that this charter has gone through all summer. Then it would need to be placed on the ballot by a majority of council. I would oppose that too, by the way. It would then need to be approved by a majority of voters during the election. I, as a resident, would vote no on that. It's incredibly doubtful that this or any council would make this move at all. And even if such a measure did make it onto the ballot, why would residents vote for it? The slippery slope argument is simply not valid here. These same communications I received over the past couple of weeks are a bit odd in that they often first use the argument that now is not the time to tax San Bruno residents. On this point, I agree, which is why this proposed 1% one-time tax just on sales would affect commercial real property sales and sales of residential properties of 5 units or more, meaning that the overwhelming majority of San Bruno residents would never see this tax. But then those same communications go on to say that we should be discussing other revenue-generating measures like a bond or another sales tax. But those types of moves would indeed impact all San Bruno residents, but conveniently would not affect commercial real estate sales at all. So it's important for folks to think about exactly whose interests are being championed in these types of communications. I also want to point out that we are not blazing a new trail here. As mentioned by a couple of our speakers, the city of San Mateo has been a charter city for a decade, and they benefit greatly from their commercial real property transfer tax. They have a healthy, growing economy. In fact, the transfer tax has been so successful that they are considering increasing it this year. But of course, in order to do so, they need to go through public hearings, put the change on the ballot for their voters to decide, because becoming a charter city, in fact, did not give their city council the power to unilaterally impose taxes, despite what some may argue, including some of our speakers tonight. As noted in the staff report, we have $457 million in unfunded capital needs. Luckily, we have some large development projects in the pipeline that will partially fund that, but that still leaves $310 million in unfunded needs. While we are constantly committed to find ways to curb our spending, as detailed in the staff report tonight, such measures alone cannot come even close to solving our revenue problem. We must also attack this problem from the revenue side. Despite the claims from some of our speakers tonight, No one's claiming that this proposal alone will solve all of our revenue problems. But we must continue to chip away at these issues using a wide variety of measures at our disposal. Many recent efforts were also detailed in the staff report tonight, as this is the only way to responsibly address our ongoing revenue shortfall. I ran for council in 2020 on the promise of not continuing to push our revenue problems onto future generations, but instead taking on the problem head on. And my advocacy for becoming a charter city and implementing the commercial real property transfer tax is just one of many ways I'm doing my best to make good on that promise. I encourage my colleagues to vote yes to put this measure before the voters in November and to let the people decide.
Sorry, I was having a problem with the mute button. Other questions or comments from colleagues? Vice Mayor Mason.
Thank you. I just wanted to take a moment to thank the San Mateo. Let me actually lower my hands. I just want to take a moment to thank the San Mateo County Association of Realtors for their continuous interest in San Mateo County elections, electeds, candidates, and today the San Bruno Potential Charter to be placed on the ballot. Your efforts to mobilize for tonight's meeting were quick and impactful and makes me hope that you will all take Council Member Marty Medina up on his consistent request for assistance at the food bank on Thursdays, where volunteers are desperately needed and the impact is great, and your mobilization efforts would be very greatly appreciated. For those in the public who may not be aware of what I'm referring to, earlier this week, there was a mass communication to SAMCAR members and potentially beyond. I went ahead and took a moment to review SAMCAR's mission and profile page on their website. What it said was this: SAMCAR, the San Mateo County Association of Realtors, is a trade association organized to ensure professionalism, protect property rights, and promote the owner of real property. We seek to serve and be responsive to our members, underlined and bolded for emphasis, by continuously developing, implementing, and promoting programs and services to help the individual realtor be successful. Our programs and services are designed to enhance performance in a continually changing real estate environment, support professionalism through training and enforcement of the Code of Ethics of the National Association of Realtors, assist in standing united in promoting and preserving real property rights through collective action, and provide the means for members to be a constructive force in the improvement of life within the community. Their mission statement is SAMCAR is a trade association organized to ensure professionalism, protect property rights, promote the ownership of real property, and help members achieve success. And their vision statement is that they're the voice for real estate professionals and property owners in San Mateo County. While I can appreciate SAMCAR's position as an advocate and a voice to real estate professionals and property owners, it is this council's responsibility to represent the individuals who live in San Bruno, also referred to as our constituents. While not required, it is important to note that the majority of those who spoke in favor of letting the voters decide were residents of San Bruno. The majority of those who spoke against it did not even mention where they resided. The vast majority of the population in San Bruno are not owners of property that are 5 units or greater. The vast majority of San Bruno residents are not owners of commercial properties. The vast majority of San Bruno residents are not members of SAMCAR, and the vast majority of San Bruno residents want a better quality of life in San Bruno. As a council member, our responsibility is to the people of San Bruno, not to the members of SAMCAR, nor to SAMCAR. Moving on, we have heard many complaints about the status of our city. City Manager Grogan tonight presented the broad efforts made to increase our revenue streams without taking money from our residents, most of which have been successful. I wanted to address a few comments raised tonight, some of which have already been addressed by Councilmember Hamilton. Future taxes. Future City Council members cannot single-handedly approve taxes. This will also need to go back to voters as we are requesting it to be done today. It's worth noting that this was one of the great concerns of Councilmember Salazar. I thank him for bringing this to our attention. It was addressed to ensure that any future taxes would have to go back to the voters and could not single-handedly a decision be made by the council.
small business owner renters impacts. We have heard about the small business owners being impacted by this tax, but here we are, council members in the community, where one of the greatest complaints we receive are vacant storefronts, and that is without a commercial tax. In speaking with building owners over the years, the issue is less the cost of renting, which many have been open to negotiating if the right tenant came along, and the much bigger issue is attracting the right tenant or the right business they want in their building. It's not a rent issue. I also wanted to take a moment to thank the council members for their thoughtful conversation over the period of this conversation leading up to tonight. As we have moved forward, every topic raised by every council member has been directly addressed to ensure that any additional cost or action would need to go back to the voters. The council could be suggesting tonight a ballot measure with additional, both an additional and broader range of freedoms, but we chose not to do that, unanimously, I might add. We agreed to limit our authority in the future, to be as restrictive as possible towards ourselves, and place the issue of the creation of the city charter and the commercial transfer tax on the ballot. Wait for it, for you, the residents of San Bruno, to decide. This is our opportunity to allow those who represent to voice their opinion on this measure. In echoing our past city attorney, he would often ask, what is the problem we are trying to solve? Here, we are trying to solve over $400 million of capital needs in our city. We are trying to solve for a desperately needed Station 52 that leaks every year. We are trying to solve for the officer position that was recently unfrozen for just 8 months. What are we going to do after that? We are trying to solve for a library that is in desperate need of space and funds for quality programming. We are trying to solve for staffing needs who are under the pay scale, leaving us with a great need for staffing without the most competitive salaries to get that staffing. We are trying to solve for medians that need to be cleaned up and cleared out. We are trying to fulfill our promise to place an arc over the Caltrain station that is 20 years overdue that would say, welcome to San Bruno. We are trying to solve for the broken streets up and down the city. We are trying to solve for the upkeep and maintenance of our parks that need everything from grass to new scoreboards to new soccer fields. We are trying to solve for the Rollingwood emergency where a piece of our own community was left without lights for over a month, and we don't have the funds to address this emergency long term. We are trying to solve for incentive programs to entice businesses to our cities, and so the list goes on and on. This is one piece of an incredibly long list of needs for San Bruno. While there have been many successful efforts made, these efforts overall are just pieces, and unless combined, we're still looking at not enough money to address all the needs that we have in our city. 100,000 here, 500,000 there, $1 million here, $5 million there. They are not all coming at one time, and neither are our needs. I will be supporting giving our residents a voice this November and allowing them to be part of the solution, because all council members up here are well aware that we have plenty of problems that need resolutions, and none, not one, can be done without revenue. Thank you to everyone who called in tonight. I hope some of my comments debunk the myths that are out there, and that we give the residents of San Bruno the opportunity to make this decision, because after all, it's the residents of San Bruno who are our members. Thank you to the public who have followed this lengthy, transparent, and public process, and thank you to city staff for all your work to bring this to the council in a timely method. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments from council members? Councilmember Salazar.
Thank you. A few things. First of all, I want to thank my colleagues here on the council, because this has been a very it's been a long process, and we've been through a lot of iterations, and a lot of concerns have been addressed, as the Vice Mayor indicated. We've had some really good conversations, and I feel like we have made a very good collaborative effort to move this forward and modify language so that it's more palatable and offers more securities. But I still have concerns about what we're proposing to do, and fundamentally, for me, relying on the business community to support things that we can't get our residents, that we as taxpayers refuse to support, I feel sends the wrong message. We didn't feel we could pass a bond. I was in favor of moving forward with the bond measure, and the bond offers not only significantly more revenue, but it guarantees that all the issues that we've outlined here tonight are actually going to be addressed. Because if we pass a bond to fix a fire station, those dollars will go to a fire station. Any general fund increase can go to anything. And I'm just not that confident that we would even address the issues when this revenue came in, because it seems like new priorities turn up all the time, and the old issues that we tried to address before seem to linger. And I also wanted to comment on the fact that we may be undemocratic in saying that we don't support putting this on a ballot, but it's my feeling that our job, and I think the state rules support the fact that we have to be unified in considering that this is really what's best to put on a ballot, right? 4 of the 5 of us have to agree that it should move forward. And so it is our responsibility to decide whether we put this out there. And I am not confident in suggesting to the public that I approve of this and ask them to ratify it, because that's really what it is. It's not a simple vote of the public that does this. This would be an action by the council saying, yes, we agree that this is the way to move forward, and we want the people to ratify it. And I'm just not comfortable in putting that out there at this time. We heard about fear mongering, and I agree. Playing on people's emotions is not the right approach to this. And I try not to be emotional about the decisions I make. But I feel that there was a good amount of fear mongering put in the city's presentation tonight. Spending more than half of tonight's presentation talking about these unmet needs, and then saying, you have to do this. When ballot language says to preserve city services as the rationale for doing this, I feel that's biased, and I don't feel that it's completely transparent. Even we're putting forward this rate, and we're offering $1 million estimated revenue, which I mentioned before, and I think a few of the speakers also mentioned is an inflated number. If you take that single year, which was very obviously an anomaly, if you look at the numbers, it's nowhere near as impressive a number, but that's not what we're stating in what we put out to the voters. And so, if we can't trust ourselves to paint a clear and honest picture, then we shouldn't be surprised that others might also exaggerate the truth to sway people in the other direction. Even the percentage that we're proposing, the 1%, if we look at the only other 2 cities in San Mateo County that have a transfer tax, ours is 20 times what Redwood City does and twice what San Mateo does. So our number is big, and we have to push that number that big to make the numbers even look convincing. And again, why would we want to have the highest number out of all of the cities in the county? And we heard that these other cities are thriving because they have a transfer tax. I would argue that they didn't get to be a big city because they had a charter. They imposed charters because they became big cities, and the only 2 are dramatically bigger than us. One of the cities has a population of 80,000, which is twice our population. The other one over 100,000, and so these are not exactly apples to apples. And to say that we're only matching what they're doing is also a little bit of a stretch. I think I'll stop there. I still have concerns over this. I won't be supporting putting this on the ballot. I do apologize to the people that feel that they are not being well represented because I am not endorsing this on ballot and allowing them a chance to vote. But clearly, I think that an endorsement from council, and this would be an endorsement from council, would not serve us well. And we do need to refocus our efforts on doing things that are more impactful. And other councils in the past have done that. When we imposed our higher rates on water and sewer, it was extremely painful to all of us. But those were impactful changes that actually have brought real relief to addressing some of the issues that we face. And I think we have to face that and not worry so much about being reelected, but actually fixing the things that have yet to be addressed. Thank you.
And I'm sorry for my voice. Any other council comments? Vice Mayor Mason?
Just a quick comment, because I actually meant to say something about the bond measure for members of the public who might be watching. The consultant the city hired shared that a bond measure was not likely to pass in this election period. So I did mean to mention it because it was in the mass communication that was distributed through SAMCAR. It is something that we looked at. We have looked at many, many different opportunities to improve our city, but the polling is just not there for it. So hopefully in the future, that's a great opportunity for us. But that likely will tax everybody, included, those who own individual homes. So it was an interesting comment that was made. But in this particular case, again, you're looking at 5 units and more, commercial, and just wanted to be clear that we did entertain a bond measure, and the polling found that it would likely not pass in this election. Thank you.
Councilmember Hilton.
So just one quick thing. Thank you, Councilmember Salazar, for your comments. Regarding, I understand your position about not wanting us putting it on the ballot appearing as an endorsement by council of putting it on the ballot. And I'll remind you that item 5D to be considered tonight is to consider resolutions setting priorities for filing written arguments for city measures approved by the city council to be submitted to the voters in the election. And which means that we're basically going to be asked if we want to authorize council members to write the arguments that go on the ballot, both for and against. And it would be, which basically means that folks here on the council who may not be for this proposal would be free to write the argument against and put it right on the ballot. And it would be very, very clear to the voters, because it will be right there next to the ballot, that you're not in favor. And I want you to remember that that option is before us tonight as well, and that placing it on the ballot for that reason is not an endorsement that the council says that you should vote yes. It's the council thinks that this is a decision that the voters should make for themselves and not have imposed on them by the city council. Thank you.
Councilmember Medina.
Yes, thank you. Thank you to my colleagues. Thank you to staff. Thank you to everyone that called in, pro and con. It's a very serious subject that San Bruno is underfunded with huge needs, things to fix the basics, like storm drains, right? And we can't get there on the current model. We need to look at every opportunity. I'm in favor of looking at those opportunities that impact the least amount of our residents. And it's not true to say that this ballot measure would put the burden on a small segment of the population or property owners. That amount, that 1% that is going to be charged only when the property sells. So, only one time isn't going to make up and it's not proper to say deficit, because the city operate and on a yearly budget where we are required to
balance the budget. This $300 million that we still need, it has to come from somewhere. It's absolutely needed. And earlier tonight, we had another $100,000 failure in our stormwater system. And with only looking at 15% of our pipes that are in the ground, we're gonna definitely wind up with more. We're gonna wind up with at least one a year now. So we have to try to find all options. Now, this ballot measure of this charter city, this will impact the least amount of people. And those that it does affect, it's going to be a 1% transfer tax. So I wanted to address Councilman Salazar's question of the transparency. I think we're as transparent as ever on this. I think this council has and staff have moved forward to providing more information, to have more meetings, to get more input on many things that we're working on. So it's clear to me that if we're looking out for all of our residents, that we have to be looking at all options to fund the improvements that are needed. It's a reality that we're facing. It's a reality that our police chief mentioned in the staff report, that we don't have as many police officers, that we have levels that are below standard metrics in a pretty, and it's hard to say, but in a high crime area. And we've heard that it's not even our residents that are doing the majority of the crime. It's where we're located with BART, with being in the middle of 3 different highways or interstates, that it's a convenient location. So I thought we had addressed all of the concerns that my colleagues have brought up. A very narrow, strictly limited charter tax, a charter city empowerment that, I mean, I guess Councilman Hamilton could ask the city attorney 20 times that this doesn't affect residential, and there'll be some people out there that are going to say it does. That's just not being truthful for those people that continue to use that language. And I love the fact that Councilman Hamilton also brought up, if a council member here does not believe in this, then they have the right to write the opposing ballot language, right? And the rebuttal to the other side. So we need one more council member to allow the people to vote and to recognize that although this isn't by any stretch of the imagination a silver bullet that's going to solve the problem, but it is a step that we need to take. That it isn't a large burden for those that own those properties to contribute a 1%, and maybe it can be buyer or seller, so it can be split. So those are my comments for now. I look forward to hearing what our mayor has to say. I can say that Marty Medina, received probably six, I believe, emails, and I didn't speak or take any contributions from any SAMCAR organization or that. I didn't even bother to apply to receive any endorsement from them from the last time. It was pretty obvious to me that it was nothing that I wanted to accept. So wanted to share that for true transparency that I have not taken and will not take that type of money. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all. And so appreciate everybody's comments. And I'm sorry again for the voice, but hopefully everybody can hear me adequately. So as I had said before, I had concerns then, I still have some now. I know that we talked about the city of San Mateo, that it was successful, and they're going back out. What they are going back out to do is at a $10 million and above threshold. That would then be imposed, that additional, to my knowledge, transfer tax. So at the $10 million range, you're clearly not talking about, for the most part, any 5-unit. You're not talking about small properties or mom and pop businesses, right? So they're making it very clear as to the larger one. And so that to me is more amenable. I can understand that. This is not a guarantee of exactly the dollar amounts. Again, there's that talk about 61,000 to 1.2 million based on 5 years, but there's a question about the 2019. What I do know what we need is we need to really sit down and have a plan and a process of trying to get what we need and how are we going to get there. We're going at things succinctly, and I appreciate that, and we're looking for avenues. But basically, for us to be a charter city is why we're putting that before folks. Why we're talking about it is because that's the only way you can offer this tax. If it was just about the tax alone, okay, it does have people concerned. It doesn't open the floodgates. I would admit that it was very good with the dialogue and people saying, okay, let's modify it, let's curtail it, because through the process, that became a large concern. But, you know, this does affect the business community, it does affect folks. That means it affects, I'm so sorry, people. So, and I could go on, but my voice is not getting there, so I will come out later with more. But at this time, the way it is written today, and at this time, I don't think it's the best and right approach. I'm going to have to pause for a moment. Vice Mayor.
Yeah, so Mayor Medina, I was hoping to get a little more clarity, because this was actually brought up in 2019, and you know, this was kicked down the road back then. And as a reminder, Tanfran has been sold, properties for YouTube have been sold, Amazon's been sold, over $400 million of commercial properties have been sold. I do believe that there's members of this council that supported Measure N, were on the council at that time with the intention of downtown growing over time. And so that this has been known for some time that there is a goal to get more commercial business downtown. And so in 2019, the reasoning was, you know, that staff wasn't available because we had so many priorities. Staff did make it a priority this year. We've been actually talking about this for months, and this is the first time I'm hearing that we need a different plan and process. So I just wanted some clarity on what that means, if we can be very clear.
I'm not totally understanding the whole question.
So your comment was that we need a plan and process, right? And my question is, what exactly are you talking about? Because
I'm talking about a holistic plan. Talking about a holistic plan, not just this, but there's a large sum, right? 310 million or what have you. That's what I'm referencing when I said a process and a plan.
So, okay. So I would just say for the record that if that was needed, we do have initiatives every year that hasn't been brought up in the 3 years I've been on council. So I just would love to hear some more details on that one.
Councilmember Hamilton.
Sorry, I lost my connection. I'm now on my phone, as you can see from the jerkiness as I'm holding it, so I apologize for that. After hearing your comments, Mayor Medina, I would put to you the same comment that I put to Councilmember Salazar, which is, if you have reservations about this about the move to charter city and putting on this tax. And again, I'll remind everyone that no one is claiming that this tax is going to solve all of our problems. It would just be one of many tools that we're already implementing that all five of us are well aware of. That both you and Councilmember Salazar would have the opportunity to write the opposing argument on the ballot. And what we are voting on tonight is, should this go on the ballot? We're not voting on should we become a charter city, despite what others may say. That it's if you and Councilmember Salazar were to collaborate on the argument against it on the ballot, that would show it would be very, very clear that you do not endorse it. But we would still be able to allow the citizens of San Bruno, the voters of San Bruno, to make this critical decision and not take that power out of the voters' hands. I strongly, strongly believe that the voters should be making this decision, and that this should not be a decision that's being influenced by any other entities, and that are including the city council. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And again, the way it is structured is it asks two things. It asks, do you want to be a charter city? And with that, to maintain critical, and that's the way it was posed in this survey or in the questionnaire as was showed to us. And that also is it doesn't have the impact that it should or needs. And that, to me, if that's the only reason to be a charter city is to tax people, then that's a concern. And I'm sorry, Vice Mayor.
Yeah, I just want to clarify that those questions are actually not being asked of us. They're being asked of the voters. And all we're saying is that we think the voters should decide. And so I also just wanted to say for the record that I have not accepted any funds from SAMCAR or have I looked out for their endorsement. Thank you.
You can always ask for endorsements and not take money. So, Mr. Hamilton.
Just to go on the record, I also have not received any money nor endorsement from SAMCAR, and I believe after tonight, I don't believe they'll be offering me any endorsements. Thank you.
Any other final comments? Councilmember Medina.
I actually have a question for our city manager. That we had a plan, of financial sustainability, and this is one of the things that we talked about. And there's very few things that we can do. Other than we're running out of options here. So we looked at the bond and the people that were polled, and then the staff report, the expert of polls told us, nah, not close. However, the charter city was a favorable thing, right? So, I'm sorry, I'm jumping myself. So I think that of having a holistic plan or process, I mean, city manager, can you maybe chime in of like, I think we're pretty much near out of options. We were able to negotiate something from Artichoke Joe's, thankfully, to create a win-win-win situation. This was part of the plan. And again, I appreciate Councilman Hamilton that if somebody on the council doesn't like it, they can still let the people vote and write the opposition. And I would totally respect that. But I'm sensing that not allowing our residents to vote on it is really disappointing. And it's almost amazing that it might happen. So I'll wait for our city manager. I see he's there.
Thank you. Through the mayor, in response to Councilmember Marty Medina's question, would you Vaughn, Grogan City Manager. I think the best answer is absolutely the city launched a comprehensive fiscal sustainability project back in 2019. There have been a number of initiatives. Many of them are recapped on page 207 in the staff report. We went through a number in the presentation. I think we've said for several years now that there is no silver bullet solution. There is no one strategy that will solve the city's fiscal or infrastructure challenges. In fact, the city will need a very multi-pronged approach. I do think it's important to note that should the city proceed with a commercial property transfer tax at any point, I would expect San Bruno to do what many cities do, is you recognize that the revenue will fluctuate, and you oftentimes look at that as one-time revenue, and so you do not project ongoing expenditures on those funds. You use them for typically one-time things, capital. That said, I know all five of you well. I know that none of you want to be talking about new taxes to residents or new taxes to businesses or new taxes to commercial property owners. And I recognize that these are exceedingly difficult conversations. The city staff has supported you through the comprehensive fiscal sustainability project, all of its efforts, as well as the conversations around what potential measures the city council may consider for November 22. Should the city council decide with the question before voters, we will certainly appropriately support that. Should the city council decide not to, we will certainly support that and work with the city council on other strategies. There are many strategies that are still to be considered. Whether the city was to have a successful commercial property tax measure or not. It again is only one of many solutions that are up for discussion, and it is you, the elected representatives of the city of San Bruno, that decide what strategies are employed and what strategies go before voters. Thank you.
I would say, in addition to obviously people who do petition, Vice Mayor Mason.
Yeah, this is for either the city manager or the city attorney. There was a comment tonight about the city forfeiting other revenues. It sounded like some kind of a county revenue by implementing this tax if it would be passed by voters. Is that accurate?
Mayor Medina, Councilmember Mason, the proposed tax ordinance provides that this tax would be in addition to the existing documentary stamp tax that's currently in the city's municipal code. There's no provision for a forfeiture.
Okay, so we would, if the voters passed it, we would be receiving what we're already receiving plus more.
Correct.
Okay, and then I just wanted to get an estimate. Thank you for that. I want to get an estimate from the city manager from the commencement of this process to today. If you can estimate about how many staff hours have been used to get to where we are today.
Through the mayor, vice mayor Mason, off the top, I do not want to provide a precise number. There's an interdepartmental team that is working on this effort. Staff from the city manager's office, the city attorney's office, the finance department, as well as consultants. Both we have a Ballot consultant as well as a poll consultant. The total number of hours are certainly in the hundreds, but I do not want to provide a off-the-cuff estimate at this time.
Okay, and if this were to come back again and at a later time, would those hours essentially be needed again? Meaning, would there be additional staff hours necessary to bring this back again at a future time if there was support?
As we mentioned earlier, a city charter can be considered at a statewide general election, so every 2 years, even years. Certainly, if the city council decides to consider a charter and or a commercial property transfer tax, we have to undertake the required 2 public hearings. I would bet 110%, and we would do significant public engagement as well as a number of the analysis and infrastructure needs, et cetera, would need to be updated. So absolutely, there would be another effort. Would there be lessons learned and potentially utilizing materials that have already been developed? Absolutely. But it would still be a very significant effort, and we would have to undertake all of the robust public engagement, communication, and state-mandated processes.
Thank you for that. So I would just say, I think in closing for myself, that we haven't taken a vote yet. I would really encourage our council members who have stated that they wouldn't support this initiative to really reconsider. In 19, staff didn't have the time. We didn't have the capacity. We followed the rules. We created a process on how to prioritize this. We agreed to that process. We agreed that this would be an initiative. We agreed that the council would work together. We all directed staff to work on this. And as you heard City Manager Grogan, it's over 100 hours of staff time already. And we all know how lean our staff is. And if, I think Councilmember Salazar made a comment about elections. If you're concerned about being associated with this particular measure, you can rebut it publicly and put your name next to it. So I would just encourage you to let the residents decide, because this is part of a plan. This is part of discussions that have been going on for not months, but years. And we've all followed the process to get here. Thank you.
Councilmember Salazar.
Thank you. So I agree. It's been discussed, and we are following the process. So I appreciate those comments, but I don't feel I can give a stronger statement against doing this than saying that I don't support even putting it on a ballot. And so I'll stick to my guns. I did want to ask a follow-up question to the vice mayors. I think the response that we got back was that it would be in addition to any of our own existing taxes, but I believe the question that was raised and the question that the vice mayor reiterated was, will this replace the county's tax, which the county does have its own property transfer tax, and so would us placing this this tax, would it then would we stop incurring the other county's tax?
Mayor Medina and Councilmember Salazar, the answer is no.
Okay, so it would be in addition to the county's tax.
Correct.
Thank you.
Councilmember Hamilton.
And on that point, I would reiterate that the person who used the argument that we would be forfeiting the county tax. There were a couple of folks who did that. Both purported to be experts, subject matter experts in this area. So, and I actually do believe that those folks are subject matter experts in this area, and probably were well aware that we would not actually be forfeiting the county county transfer tax money, and this would be an addition. I would also like to close by reiterating my support for this, reiterating that this is a decision that should be placed to the voters and not by us. I'm disappointed to hear both Councilmember Salazar and Mayor Medina bringing up new concerns tonight that we are hearing for the first time. Councilmember Salazar saying that the number's too high, and Mayor Medina saying that this should be part of a more comprehensive program. We've had several public hearings on this. We've been talking about this for months, and waiting until the last minute, immediately before the vote, to bring up new concerns when there's no opportunity to potentially address them is massively disappointing. I reiterate that both of you have the ability to write the rebuttal argument and put your names to it, and it will be right on the ballot and or in the ballot workbook, and make your position very, very clear. So I reiterate my position here that this is an important decision that needs to be made by the voters, and that we should allow the voters to make that decision, and that we should let the people vote and allow the people of San Bruno to make this decision free from the free from influence from special interests.
Councilmember Salazar.
And I just wanted to clarify that the issue of that number being inflated is not a new concern for me, and I did state it previously in meetings, and so I'm not didn't just come up with it. It has been brought up before. And you can shake your head no, but it's true. You can go back and watch the meeting.
Okay. Vice Mayor Mason.
Yeah, I know so it was going to be my closing comment, but I thought I'd also thank the consultants who we have also paid for to get to this point, because we've asked a lot of questions, maybe some novice questions, and they've been actually incredibly patient with us, and very sincerely, I wanted to make sure we thank them, because the information they gave us was largely how a lot of the decisions were made on this council, not just for tonight, but other decisions that we've made previously and now. So just in my thank yous, I also meant to thank the consultants, because I think they've been very helpful in this process. Thank you.
I think, thank you for reminding and saying that, Vice Mayor. And they didn't do just this, they did a survey for many questions. I know we talk about, having the people vote, and there's nothing wrong with ever of that. And again, you talk about, a majority of the council wanted the rotational mayor to be on the ballot. That's not being placed before the people, but because it didn't poll well, it was decided maybe not put that on because of the cost for the initiative. And, and when I say yes, there's been a process followed. That's not the question. What I'm saying is it's 310 million. That's what I mean. We have this big need. And that's what I'm talking about. We have to have that plan and to go to the folks, because we may have one opportunity only to do that. And I think it is hard times with small businesses. It is a challenging time in our economy. And so I think as many places, right, the county is saying, hey, we're not going to put up a tax. Others for business license, they're pulling it back because it's just a challenging time as well. But anyway, I know we've all had opportunities to speak, but I just wanted to add that too. But thank you to the Vice Mayor for mentioning the others that had done work as well. With that, back to council. It is an action item. If there is a motion.
Through the mayor.
Hamilton.
I would like to make a motion that we adopt the resolution to submit to the voters for the November 8th, 2022 general municipal election, a measure for the city charter and authorizing a real property transfer tax.
I second.
Motion Hamilton, seconded Mason. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Aye.
Councilmember Marty Medina?
Aye.
Councilmember Salazar?
No.
Vice Mayor Mason?
Yes.
Mayor Rico Medina?
No. Motion does pass a 3-2, but it required 4/5, so therefore it did not pass, if I said that correctly. With that, we move on to our next item, which is item C. If it could be read, please.
Item 5C, consideration of resolution of the City Council of the City of San Bruno submitting to the voters at the November 8, 2022 general municipal election a measure that proposes adoption of an ordinance to establish term limits, requesting that such election be consolidated with the statewide general election held on that date and taking certain other actions.
We'll turn it to the city attorney. That other font was perfect. And please go ahead.
Hello, Mayor Medina, City Council members. So here's the second of the two ballot measures that you're considering this evening. It's regarding the establishment of term limits for elected officials of the city. Here's an outline of the presentation I'm going to give. I'll briefly discuss the background of elected terms. I'll review the draft ballot question ordinance. We'll take council member questions. You'll provide for public comment, and then the City Council will consider whether to approve a resolution to submit the measure to the voters. So here's the history of term limits in San Bruno. In 1977, voters established a term limit of 2 consecutive 4-year terms for all city council members. And not long after that, there were a series of court cases that invalidated term limits. So then the city repealed the term limit ordinance. And as we were talking about before, typically city council can't change an ordinance that is adopted by the voters. However, because the courts had invalidated term limits, what the city did was bring a validation action to have the courts determine that it was appropriate for the city council to eliminate the term limits in light of the court cases finding them to be invalid. And at that time, the current provision in the municipal code was established, which allowed for unlimited terms. In 1995, the California legislature amended the code to clearly authorize establishing term limits, and that has to be done by a vote of the people. Currently, in San Mateo County, there are term limits in a number of the cities. Foster City has 2 consecutive 4-year terms. Millbrae has 2 consecutive 4-year terms. San Mateo has 3 consecutive 4-year terms. Redwood City has 4 consecutive 4-year terms. Pacifica has 2 4-year terms in total, whether consecutive or not. And then San Mateo County, the Board of Supervisors, has a term limit for 3 consecutive 4-year terms. The remaining cities within San Mateo County do not have term limits. So here's a timeline on your activities to date on this matter. There was a study session in October of 2021 about a number of potential measures, including term limits. In March of this year, the city staff presented options for direction on whether a term limit measure should be included. Then in June, the City Council received the results of the poll that was authorized in March, and then provided staff direction to prepare a measure to submit to the voters and what that measure should say. And then again on July 26th, the City Council held a study session to discuss the potential term limit ballot measure. So here's a background about the current elected terms. As you know, City of San Bruno has a 5-person body, 1 elected mayor and 4 elected council members. And in November of this year, the City Council will have its first by-district election, where 2 of the districts will hold an election. They are districts 1 and 4, and mayor will continue to be elected at large every 2 years. And at large means on a citywide basis, not by district. The current terms for each of the offices are: mayor has a term of 2 years, and a city council member has a term of 4 years. And as I mentioned before, there is no limit on the number of terms an individual can serve. So what's before you today is whether the city council wants to put the question to voters: do you want to adopt an ordinance that would amend your municipal code to limit terms for city council members and the mayor? That's what there would be a ballot question, and part of the ballot materials would be the actual ordinance that provides that amendment. What that ordinance says is effectively that a council member is elected to serve 12 consecutive years. A mayor may not serve more than 6 consecutive terms, and a city council member may not serve more than 3 consecutive 4-year terms. And this computation of when the terms are limited begins with elections and terms that begin after December 1, 2022. So here's the draft ballot question, which we've discussed before. Shall an ordinance be adopted to amend the City of San Bruno Municipal Code to limit service on the City Council to consecutive terms of more than 12 consecutive years, or as mayor to consecutive terms of no more than 12 consecutive years? In order to put that measure on the ballot, you would have to adopt a resolution that specifies that that ballot question should be placed on the November 8th, 2022 general municipal election ballot. And that would be consolidated with the state statewide general election. It takes certain other actions. The next steps here are for the council to present us with any questions. You'll be taking public comment and have discussion and then consider the resolution. And with that, I'm available to take any questions.
Thanks, City Attorney. Questions from colleagues on the presentation, please. If we could stop sharing the screen, please. I'm not seeing any at this time, so let's move to the public. And if there's any members of the public that would like to speak, if you could please raise your hand, and then I would ask Lupita if you could assist.
I will now be bringing in Sandra Perez Vargas. Sandra, whenever you're ready, you're welcome to speak.
I am in total agreement for limited term limits, and I think tonight really spoke broadly as to why. We had a mayor tonight who allowed staff to spend so much time and money preparing to allow the voters to vote, and he couldn't even really articulate why. I mean, in no depth did he say why he was against it. And he never answered if he took SAMCAR money, and neither did Michael. The other three did. I think it's very important that we have complete clarity. And another reason to have term limits is for fresh ideas. I mean, if we have the same people in office, we see what happens. We have a town that continues on the same path, the streets falling apart. And without someone in the lead saying, hey, you know, I traveled here or I studied that. I have an idea. This worked somewhere else. Let's bring it here. I don't see that coming from people who stay on council. Former councils were like that. The same people, 24 years, some of them, not bringing anything fresh or new or energetic, or maybe just waiting to the last minute during voting to wait out what everybody else is going to say and run to a safe zone. I think we need people who are new, who are not beholden to any of our old interests, former mayors, the big money realtors, and who are, it just something really is not right when the mayor isn't articulating what he stands for and doesn't believe possibly in true democracy from what I heard tonight. And a mayor, I think I'll leave it at that. We believe in democracy, and that's not what we're seeing. So term limits every time. You know, prove to everybody what you have by leading from the front, not following from back. There's a lot of new energetic people out there, but when people are taking money from SAMCAR and all those other interests, their voices don't get to shine through when every day in your mailbox you have 10-foot posters of certain candidates. I mean, how are you going to really get a true feel and a true energy for a city? And it would be wonderful if everybody said, you know what, only small donors, not real estate interests, people who are not living in our town. So term limits is my opinion. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker we'll be bringing in is Tim. Tim, whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Thank you again. Yes, I agree with Sandra Perez Vargas, what she said. Yes, we need term limits. We need fresh new ideas. We need strong, very strong leadership, and to guide us, to lead us, to improve San Bruno. We're like we're stagnant. We're progressing very slow at a slow pace, and we need to get there now, or more like yesterday, because things are, you know, with our revenue streaming is, you know, it's ridiculous. You guys need to have a sense of urgency, please, to get some more revenue. I mean, you guys have been kicking it around. That's got to stop. We got to be more aggressive. Thank you. Raina would like to say something as well. Thank you.
Yeah, good evening. I'm very disappointed. I'm very sad. It seems like a democracy locally is so
also, going down. I feel so sad to live in San Bruno because basically you listen to people who have money and not the people that are actually residents of San Bruno. And this is basically I'm not even angry, but sad. This basically the old guard still controls city council. How can that be? Okay, so you need to put term limits. There is a new generation you will not be able to control. So please, it is definitely a sad day today. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Jamie Montezon. Jamie Montezon, whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Hi, I just had to say something because it certainly feels like some of the residents have taken some information and twisted it up into some sort of monster of big wealthy people. That is absolutely untrue. And I have to speak up. I have to, because I don't understand the motivation that anyone has to not move forward on all of the progression that we have tried as the CEO of the Chamber of Commerce for 8 years, tried to move this city towards progression. And the rabble-rousers who were emotional tonight and were accusatory and using personal attacks, you should be ashamed of yourself. The vote was 5-2. It did not pass because it's not structured the way it needs to be for our city. It has nothing to do with any special interests or any wealthy anybody. This is about me and my family. I've been here for 30 years.
I'm sorry, Ms. Montezon. I just want to make sure we're sticking to the issue.
Yes, I would like to make it perfectly clear. I apologize for making it emotional, but some of my peers, people and friends I've known for many, many years, 25 years or more, I was ashamed at the behavior I heard, and I want to say that. I think the vote went the way it should. I don't believe that it is structured the way we need to, and I apologize. Term limits, I agree with. Thank you for your listening.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Virginia Yankee. Virginia, whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
My opinion is yes, term limits might work. However, I don't think it does anyone any good to put down the mayor. The mayor has done an exemplary job. He knows San Bruno better than anybody on that council. He's been here longer than any one of you. And I don't think it's very kind of callers in to beat him up. He's been a great mayor, and he has my vote. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Mayor Medina, no other hands are raised.
Thank you. If we could bring it back to council. Thank again everybody who's stayed through the meeting and offered their comments. I see a hand went up, so this will be the last opportunity for the public. If you do wish to speak, this is your last opportunity. Please raise your hand and then you'll be brought in. We have our final speaker, please.
Next speaker is Tina Wong. Tina, whenever you're ready.
Yes, thank you very much. I appreciate for the opportunity to speak again. Thank you for Mayor Medina for doing such a wonderful job. And every councilman, whether they vote yes or no tonight, they've done a great job. Term limit is always needed, but at the same time, it really takes time for one term of councilman to work on a project or even to add on the plan for the next 4 or 5 years. So the term limit, it should not be a year, it should not be 2 or 3 or even 4. I mean, even for the president in the United States, it's like 4 years when it turns over, and it's still another 4 years. It really takes that long to try to help out the city or county or even U.S. So, but it's just not way too long on the seat, of course. But it does really take some time to address issues and also carry on tasks. It's not just you plan today and you act tomorrow, because there's other consequences to affect the decision that you make. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any other speakers?
There are no other hands raised.
Thank you very much. We'll bring it back to council. I'll go ahead and start. For this, one of the things is in 1977, as was reported, it was brought to the vote of the folks, or was petitioned, and it was approved, and then it was, by a court, it was rescinded. And I remember the story was there were 2 council members that were in office at the time, and one said, you know what, I'm going to honor the 8 years, and I'm done. And another one said, no, I'm going to continue and ran for 24. Was on the council for 24 years. So, and he made that choice. So it was very interesting how that changed. The thing is too, just to be clear, if you have a council member 3 4-year terms, then you can be mayor. So in essence, it could give someone technically 24 years, technically, or they take a break and come back. So, in my mind, and again, this goes forward, it doesn't count years past, is that because the people did vote in 1977, and they did ask for that to happen, and a judge or a court threw it out, I think this is something that I will support, to put on the ballot, to let the folks have that opportunity to address that was kind of taken away from them in 1978. So that's my immediate comments. Other colleagues? Vice Mayor Mason.
Yeah, I just appreciate the comment tonight. And I just wanted to ask staff if they could clarify the issue that one of the commenters brought up around the term limits, just so that it's coming directly from staff. What is it exactly that is being proposed as far as how many years within a term, and then how many terms one can have? And then I have one more comment. That'd be for City Hall, please.
I'm Mayor Medina and City Council Member Mason. So the term limit measure would limit the terms of office to 12 years, and that would be 6 terms of 2 years for for office of mayor, and 3 terms of 4 years for city council members, and it would be prospect only.
Thank you for that clarification. And then I did just want to say that we've talked about this as well for months, and there's been comments, I think, from both sides of this council around, what does it mean? Does it bring up opportunities? And I think a great example is the district, our new district around Rollingwood, that, doesn't have anybody running right now. And within, I want to say, 2 days, had 3 candidates running, excited to run for that location. So I think the ability to run is, very, very, very important. It's an incredible responsibility. And I think oftentimes, based on statistics, people don't run because they're intimidated or they don't want to run against incumbents. Now that we're districted, likely don't want to run against neighbors or friends. And so I think the importance of term limits are very high up there to encourage new ideas, new thoughts, but also to really just give other people a chance to represent the community that they love. So I'll obviously be supporting this. I've been supportive since it was initiated. And just wanted to comment on that and on the current status of our elections in that district. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Hamilton.
I'm also supportive of this. I think that what we settled on regarding the 12 years, the 3 terms for council, 6 terms for mayor, strikes a good balance between the concerns of folks that candidates wouldn't have enough time to get their initiatives through and get the work done that they really are passionate about and want the change, make the change that they want to see in the city. I think 12 years is enough time to do that, and anyone who would get to that point would be able to run for one of the other positions that they wanted to, or take a break and come back and start the clock all over again and do 12 more years. So I think this is a good balance between those two opposing sides. I do agree with the vice mayor's positions regarding opening up opportunities for other candidates and making sure that folks have those opportunities, and I'm supportive of this tonight. Thank you.
Councilmember Medina.
Yes, thank you. We have been talking about this for a while. Prior didn't get the support, but it is something that it's about I think it's not too short, not too long, kind of like the Goldilocks, just right. 12 years is a good amount of time, and you could take a break and come back and run for mayor, or give somebody else an opportunity. I think it's a good idea. It polled well, and I will be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Salazar.
I was really on the fence on this one because, as the vice mayor said earlier, what are we trying to fix? And I heard some people comment that we need new ideas, and different opinions are definitely it's important to look at things from different perspectives, but I also see this as sort of a volunteer position. None of us are career politicians. None of us are making enough money to live off this, so we do it because we care about our city. And I certainly don't want to send people the wrong message when they agree to volunteer, that their service is valuable, but only to a point, and then we'll put them out to pasture, or you got to go away for a while and give somebody else a chance. We don't do that with our committees or commissions. We certainly don't do it with any of our other volunteer opportunities that we have across the city. And we're fortunate in that in San Bruno, we have people that dedicate decades of their lives to things that they're passionate about in the community. And to some people in the past, that's been city council. And, I would really hate to send a message that, that just because you've been on too long, you're no longer valuable, you're no longer providing value. But it does seem like this passed before, and there's probably interest in doing it. Sadly, there'll probably be a good amount of voter backlash over things that are not even in the city of San Bruno, and people will say, yes, we need to limit it, get rid of the, drain the swamp, and, we need different people. And so, but, that'll be, I think that is something that the people should have an opportunity to vote on, and if that's what they choose to do, then so be it. I think I do agree that 12 years is a generous term. I think non-consecutively at the end of my term, it would have been 13 years, and I got to say it flew by. And I like to think I still add some value, but maybe after the last vote, other people are thinking that it's time for me to go. So we'll see. But I think I will also support this one, not because I think it's necessary, but because I think that there is interest, and I do want to give the people an opportunity to state how they feel about who governs their city.
Okay, thank you, everyone. This is a resolution. Is there any action by council? Vice Mayor, thank you.
I just want to just for the purpose of the public, I just want to make sure that everybody's clear that we are not voting on the term limits. We're voting to place the item on the ballot. So in case anybody's watching. So it just motion to, under the conduct of business, to move item 5C onto the ballot. Consideration of resolution of the City Council of the City of San Bruno submitting to the voters at the November 8, 2022 General Municipal Election a measure that proposes adoption of an ordinance to establish term limits, requesting that such election be consolidated with the statewide general election held on that date and taking certain other actions.
I will second.
A motion, Mason, second, and Hamilton. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Hamilton,
Aye.
Councilmember Marty Medina,
Aye.
Councilmember Salazar,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Mason,
Aye.
Mayor Rico Medina.
Aye. Resolution passes 5-0. Now moving on to item D, please.
Item 5D, consider resolutions setting priorities for filing written arguments for city measures approved by the City Council to be submitted to the voters at the general municipal election to be held on Tuesday, November 8th, 2022, and providing for the filing of rebuttal arguments for city matters.
City Attorney.
Hello, Mayor Medina, City Council members. Your Interim City Attorney Trish Ortiz, and I'm going to present the last item here today, which is related to the ballot measure that you just proposed. We'll start with the background. Oh, yeah. The overview here, we'll start with the background. There will be only one resolution since you've only voted to put one measure on the ballot, and then there'll be consideration of that resolution. I'll first describe the resolution, and then you will consider the resolution. As you know, tonight you've been discussing two potential ballot measures, the term limit measure and the charter tax measure. By the previous two votes, you authorized only the term limit measure to move forward. And for a measure that is going to be placed on the ballot, the City Council needs to determine whether it wants to authorize arguments in favor or against the measure, and whether it wants to authorize rebuttal arguments. So who can submit an argument? City Council members, registered voters, or bona fide associations of citizens. And who can submit a rebuttal? If there is an argument in favor of a measure and an argument against the measure, the authors of each argument may submit a rebuttal to the others, or the City Council may authorize, or the author may authorize in writing somebody else to submit a rebuttal on their behalf. So there are deadlines, since this is consolidated with the general election in November. There are some specific deadlines so that these materials can be placed in the ballot materials. The submission for written arguments is due by 5 p.m. on Thursday, August 18th. The submission of rebuttal arguments, should they be authorized, is due by 5 p.m. on Friday, August 26th. And these are submitted to the city clerk's office. So what happens if multiple arguments are submitted? I noted who is authorized to submit measures. Only one argument in favor and only one argument against a measure may be included in the ballot in the voter information guide. So if more than one argument is submitted, the Elections Code provides a priority for which our argument is selected. The first priority goes to the City Council, to any member of the City Council or the City Council as a whole, provided that that argument is authorized by the City Council. And then next are bona fide sponsor or proponent of the measure, a bona fide association of citizens, and individual voters who are eligible to vote on the measure. So, so the resolution here is authorizes city council members to author arguments in favor of the ballot measure or against the ballot measure. It also provides that if 3 or more council members volunteer to author an argument, that the argument must be approved at a public city council meeting. If there are no volunteers among the city council members to author an argument, then and you don't fill in the blanks of the proposed resolution, then the city council will not have authorized an author, and then you follow and if other arguments are submitted in favor or against the ballot measure, you would follow the priority in the elections code, which means the next in line would be if there is a bona fide sponsor or proponent, if there was a bona fide association of citizens, and then finally individual voters. One thing to note is if the city council members, again, don't vote to authorize any city council members to author an argument, that doesn't prevent a city council member from later deciding to author an argument in capacity as an individual voter and also showing that they are a city council member. It's just that that argument has not been authorized by the council and therefore doesn't get the priority as if the city council had authorized the argument. Then next, rebuttal arguments are only permitted if the city council adopts a resolution to authorize rebuttals. And what the election code says is the city council must adopt election code section 9285A. And the proposed resolution takes the provisions from section 9285A to allow for rebuttal arguments. If the city council does not want to permit rebuttal arguments, it would and does want to authorize authors, it could vote to strike section 2 of the resolution, or if it doesn't want to authorize arguments and it doesn't want to authorize rebuttal arguments, the city council simply would not adopt the resolution. So the resolution, there's a resolution, as I mentioned, for term limits and a resolution for taxes. The tax measure, since the tax measure is not going forward, I'll only address the resolution for term limits. The way the resolution is set up is there are blanks where it allows city council members to volunteer to author an argument favor or against. If there's no volunteers, you leave it blank, and there's no authorized city council authors, and the order of priority follows the election code. And again, if you don't want any rebuttal arguments, you would simply you propose to strike section 2 of the resolution. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, and don't leave the podium. I think there might be a couple. And for myself personally, that was, we kept talking on the B as far as offer rebuttal. First, that has to be approved by the council that for rebuttals, as was stated, under 9285A. But at the same time, too, what it also does, if you want to do an argument and you're on the council, you become prioritized. You go to the front of the line. So I personally will not be volunteering for any of that personally. So with that, I think the questions to us is there's that kind of 2 items, the authorization if we wish for rebuttals, but also if there are volunteers on the council that wish to write the arguments. And questions to the city attorney, colleagues. City attorney, you must have done so well that there are no questions. If there are no questions, Councilmember Medina.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have any questions. I was going to offer to write in favor if you were taking that now, volunteers. I apologize if you're not.
And just it's okay. And please understand, nobody has to do it. It's just a choice. So I don't want people to feel they have to step up like a committee or something. But I also want to, while we're here, if you can pause and let me go to the public, see if
sorry.
Yes. No, you were perfect. That was perfect. Because that's what I was asking that question. if there's any members of the public that wish to speak on this item, what it is resolutions for assigning the prioritization of the argument for the term limits, and then to see if we adopt a rebuttal unauthorized act. So any members of the public wish to speak on that, if you could please raise your hand now.
Mayor Medina, no hands are raised.
Thank you very much. We'll bring it back to the council. We'd heard from Councilmember Medina that he wishes to be an authorized argument in favor. I think I said that right. Any other questions or comments from colleagues? Councilmember Hamilton.
I would support having Councilmember Medina write the argument in favor. And considering that all 5 of us were in favor of putting on the ballot, I think it might be hard pressed to find one of us to volunteer for the against. So I'm not going to volunteer for the against, and I'll support Marty to do the for.
Any other comments from colleagues? Okay, and so
Mr.
yes,
Mayor?
Councilmember Medina.
Yeah, it's okay to have 2 people write it. We just would get a little tricky if we got 3. So I seeing if my colleagues wanted to assist, that would be great.
Yeah, and you don't have to, but I would not recommend 3, but you could do 3.
Right.
But then we're going to because of the Brown Act, it's going to have to come back to us for that approval to obviously stay within the parameters of the Brown Act. So there's Councilmember Medina. So City Attorney, right now we have a resolution that we would fill in the blank that Marty Medina wishes to be prioritized and be on for the argument. Do the resolutions have to be taken separately, or can they be taken in one action if somebody motions to also authorize the rebuttals, if they choose?
Yeah, Mayor Medina, the resolution set up that you would just approve the one resolution. You'd write Councilmember Medina's name in the blank, and it also provides for ballot argument rebuttals. In the event there are arguments for and against, it would allow the author of an argument for, in this case, Councilmember Medina, to then author a rebuttal argument or to give written permission to somebody else to author the rebuttal argument.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Hamilton.
Before we go to a resolution, I completely agree that having 3 of us write one is a terrible idea. But I want to ask Councilmember Medina, would you prefer to have help? Or were you fishing for a second?
It's always good to have a second set of eyes, right? Just from my point of view. So if anyone was willing to join me, I'd be happy to welcome you. Anyone.
So the mayor said he's out. I'll offer to Michael and Linda first. Either of you interested? If not, I'll do it.
And it's not out because it's Mr. Medina. It is out just because it prioritizes me, and I just feel that.
No, you made your opinion clear.
For the people.
No issue.
So, Vice Mayor Mason. Oh, your hand came in line.
No, I was just going to say I would, but I think given the additional responsibility we took on recently, I think it's too much. But I would ask the city attorney if there's anything wrong with reviewing. Like once it's done, is that something that can go to the council? It really does have to be limited to those who volunteer tonight.
Well, there's the Brown Act unless we bring it back as a whole. But anyway, city attorney.
So I think Mayor Medina, Councilmember Mason, I think there's nothing wrong with, bringing the argument back. I think you probably have timing constraints because of the deadlines and the meetings between now and the deadline. So you may not want to do that. You may not want to have that be a condition of submitting the argument because it may be an obstacle to getting it filed on time.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Okay, see no other hands up. And this is an action item, so if anybody wants to introduce the resolution.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt a resolution authorizing the City Council to appoint Council Member Medina and myself to write an argument for the term limits ballot item.
Second.
Motion Hamilton, second Marty Medina, and City Attorney, if that meets okay with everything, then we'll go ahead and get a roll call, please.
Councilmember Hamilton,
Aye.
Councilmember Marty Medina,
Aye.
Councilmember Salazar,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Mason,
Aye.
Mayor Rico Medina.
Aye. Resolution passes 5-0. That will conclude the agenda. I do want to thank the public that offered their comments. And again, always, I appreciate everybody trying to be respectful and mindful of our comments. And sometimes I know it gets passionate, but again, we're all here for the community. I appreciate my colleagues for their time and their comments, and staff as well. But what I want to do, maybe not normal in a special meeting, but I do want to adjourn in a moment of silence and in remembrance of retired Vice Mayor Gonzalez of the town of Colma, who passed away yesterday. And so to a colleague who very much felt she's made a difference and gave to her community as an employee, as a resident, and as an elected. That's truly what it's about. And when it comes our time, we can reflect back and have her passion and her spirit, then we are all blessed. So with that, if I can ask for a moment of silence for the retired Vice Mayor Gonzalez of the town of Colma. Thank you, colleagues, and just for everybody's information, I've already reached out to the mayor of Colma to offer our city's condolences to their colleagues, our colleagues, and to the community. With that, we will go ahead and adjourn this meeting to the next regular city council meeting, which will be held on August 23rd, 2022 at 7 p.m. Thank you, everybody, and please be safe and enjoy the rest of your evening.